All right.
Meeting, Carlson? Okay.
Good evening. I will now call to order the special city council meeting of June 5th, 2023. Members of the public are invited to attend in-person council meetings in council chambers. Public access to the meeting is also available by telephone by using the call-in numbers posted on the meeting agenda. Meetings are broadcast on Channel 8 for Comcast and Xfinity subscribers and on the city's YouTube channel online. Joanna, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Leidy,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lukman Hiramasa. Here. Councilmember Long,
Here.
Councilmember Jaramillo,
Here.
Councilmember Kondo,
Here.
Councilmember Burns. Here. Councilmember Goff. Here. Councilmember Brown. Here. Councilmember Walker.
Here.
Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. City Manager Guyer, are there any responses to citizen inquiry?
Yes, one topic this evening for the benefit of mayor and council and the public. I wanted to let you know that code enforcement, also known as neighborhood services, is very active in terms of going throughout the city and addressing properties with tall grasses, weeds, etc. So just want to remind residents to use the Access Northglenn app, as well as each of you to turn in properties that have issues, and staff will address those as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I would like to welcome Beth McElry? Say that again for me. Come on up. So we're going to interview her. She is here to interview with council to be a regular member on the Planning Commission. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you.
And so you were interviewed by the Planning Commission on May 16th, and the commission recommended your appointment.
Thank you.
So I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you are interested in serving in this way.
Sure. In answer to your first question, McElry.
McElry, sorry.
No, that's fine.
McElry, got it.
First of all, I'm Beth McElry. I've lived in the city of North Glen for 35 years. My parents lived here 20 years before that. So I have long affiliations and ties with the city, and I've seen it change and over those years. Why would I like to be on the Planning Committee? I would like to be on the Planning Committee because I would like to, first of all, give a voice to Ward 2. And then I would also like to help North Glen move forward. There's lots of challenges for North Glen in terms of trying to balance the various concerns, constraints that we have, and try to maybe guide that direction in ways that don't negatively impact the current residents, but enhance their quality of life.
Great,
That's
thank
essentially
you.
it.
I love it. Any council members, do you have any questions or comments? Councilmember Brown?
Hi, how you doing? I'm so glad you decided to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you for stepping up to the plate. I think you're going to enjoy your time on the Planning Commission, and I'm just thrilled to death that you're going to join them.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you, Mayor. So hello again, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I appreciated seeing you at the Sustainability Forum, the Climate Forum. I just had a really quick question. Are you retired?
Yes.
So that explains why. I mean, you're on the resident, you've been on the resident task force, and you're on CCPP, and now you'll be on the Planning Commission. So thank you so much for giving your time to North
You're
Glen.
welcome. Yes, it's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, and been really thankful for the time that I've had to be able to really understand city government. Yeah.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Beth, thank you for coming forward, and I wanted to ask a philosophical question. I hope you don't mind. And
No, not at all.
clearly, if you watch the news, there is a lot of controversy about what was known as the governor's bill, SB 23-213, if I got my
Yes.
numbers right, because there's so many numbers. And clearly, the drama unfolded, and now we're in intermission. But I would like to know what your thoughts are in terms of preemption of local control. Where do you sit on that?
I'm completely against preemption of local control. I believe that cities know what's best. It should be directed at the city level in terms of development, the types of housing, and the direction the city goes. I don't think it's a state matter.
Okay, great. And I have to applaud the fact that you've followed this very closely. I didn't realize when I got into this seat that I needed to follow all these things so closely. So I too am still in a learning mode, and it seems to me you're very much a person about learning. So
Yes. very
I know
much.
you will do well for the
Thank you.
commission.
Councilmember Long?
Having the pleasure of seeing your interview before the Planning Commission, Beth, I was very impressed with your statements there and how you handled yourself.
Thank you.
With a lot of difficult questions, but I thought it was very good. As a hospital person myself, I am really taken with spending all the time that you have at St. Joseph Hospital in accounting and finance. And what you're bringing to the table, I think, is a real understanding of finance, accounting, money, where funds are being spent, those kinds of things. And I know you're very attuned to those kinds of concerns and considerations. And I think you'll do very well understanding the dollar signs that are involved sometimes with these decisions on planning. And I heard you speak up many times about water, traffic, those kinds of things, which, are really important when we start looking at zoning and new projects coming to the fore. So
Right.
I'm not letting you talk, I'm doing all the
No,
talking here.
that's
so
great.
I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
Councilmember Jaramillo?
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Beth.
Hi.
So what are some areas of Ward 2 that you'd like to address on the planning committee?
Well, right now, the area in Ward 2 is the Nura site on 112th and Irma Drive. And I've been noticing, since I've been going to the planning meetings for a few months now, and what I've noticed is that the type of interest that we're having in North Glen is high-density housing in relatively small areas. And as Councilmember Long alluded to, I have concerns with regards to water, police, and infrastructure, roads, infrastructure, and how we are going to sustain that kind of development with those constraints. So I am concerned about, and that's right down the street from me, on 112th and Irma Drive. So I'm concerned about what's going to go in there, and how is that going to how is that going to impact the neighborhood just north of it?
Thank you.
Give me a call tomorrow. I'll let you know.
Absolutely.
I'll have you coming to those meetings too.
Mayor Pro Tem Lukman Hiramasa?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Beth, I just want to say thank you so much for stepping up. It's obvious that you care so much about the city with all of the boards that you are on. And sometimes, we struggle to get citizen involvement, but it's clear that you care enough to step up to the plate, so I wanted to start with that.
Thank you.
And also, I kind of had a question along the lines of Councilmember Jaramillo. I was just really interested in knowing, what you hope to accomplish more or bring to light more being on the Planning Commission.
Well, I would say that what I hope to bring to the Planning Commission is three questions. What is it we're trying to accomplish and why? How is the proposal in front of us going to accomplish that stated goal? And what are the unintended consequences? And I think there's an implicit answering of the first two questions a lot of times, but I would like to dig deeper into what are the unintended consequences of what we're doing.
Thank you so much, and also appreciate your understanding of SB 213, because that is definitely something that was a big deal for us, and not preempting local control. So it's good to see that you have that understanding, because that's where we stand as well. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Beth. I don't have anything outside of what my council members have already said. I will echo Councilmember Condo's sentiments that you are very well prepared, very researched, very engaged, and Thank you for serving.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Okay, we have a proclamation tonight. If council would join me down front. You can bring your fancy glasses. Good evening. I would like to welcome Christina. Come on down, representing our Diversity, Inclusivity, and Social Equity Board. Remind me how to say your last name. Samino, thank you. I am struggling with last names today. All right. Thank you for being here. Okay. Whereas the month of June is an opportunity to recognize the impact that members of the I'm going to struggle. I'm going to just, it's all throughout this thing. LGBTQ plus community have had on history. Celebrate all of the identities and progress made by the LGBTQ plus community and support efforts to provide all LGBTQ plus individuals freedom, liberation, joy, and pride without exception. And whereas we recognize the importance of the Stonewall Inn uprising in 1969, a key moment in the LGBTQ plus civil rights movement, which inspired millions around the world to seek fairness, justice, and equal rights. And whereas, for many, Pride represents protest against unjust legislation and cultural stigma affecting the LGBTQ plus community. Pride is also a month to celebrate LGBTQ plus residents, volunteers, and employees who make our organization and community better. And whereas Colorado law prohibits discrimination based on gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. However, many continue to face significantly higher rates of discrimination in their personal lives, employment, housing, and healthcare, as well as in the public sphere. And whereas there is an ongoing need to create a safe, welcoming, and affirming space for all, where members of the LGBTQ plus community can live openly without fear of judgment, discrimination, or violence. And whereas the city supports policies, practices, and programs that honor and respect the LGBTQ plus community, and is proud to host a community pride event and fly pride flags at City Hall and the Justice Center during the month of June. And whereas the City of North Glen recognizes the resilience and accomplishments of LGBTQ plus individuals and reaffirms its commitment to respecting and protecting the rights of every resident, employee, volunteer, vendor, and visitor who are a part of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, therefore, I, Meredith Leidy, Mayor of the City of North Glen, Colorado, do hereby proclaim June 2023 as Pride Month in the City of North Glen and encourage all residents to celebrate our proud and diverse community and reflect on the ways we can all live and work together with a commitment to supporting visibility, dignity, and equity for all people. Dated at North Glen, Colorado, this 5th day of June, 2023. Thank you, Christina, for being here. Would you have anything to add?
On behalf of the DICE board, I really want to thank you for the proclamation. And I also want to thank you for all you do for the LGBTQ plus community. So you did the same thing you did here in North Glen. In addition to that, I thought it was really important to receive this proclamation in drag, because right now our community is under attack, whether it be drag performers, whether it be transgendered individuals, whether it be any member of the community. I know for myself personally, the backlash that I'm facing currently in the current trend of events in Florida and Tennessee and other places. So I'm really proud to be a resident of North Glen and be part of a city and a community that stands with our community. And I'm so excited for Pride that's happening. I'm sorry I won't be there, have a graduation, but I'm really excited and I'm pumped that the city's bringing it back. And I'm super excited that our youth has a great example set forth to them by what the city is doing. So thank you very much.
Okay, got everybody. Ready? 1, 2, 3. No, you're supposed to say pride. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh my gosh, absolutely. Oh, it's great.
Oh, my partner in
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have two presentations tonight. The first one, Youth Commission Quarterly Update. Youth Commissioner member Alex Sandu will present the update. Alex, come on up.
Hello. Oh. Sorry. Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. Just one second. It's on my phone. I'm Alex Sundu. I'm here with Youth Commission, and I've been on the Youth Commission for about a year now. I just want to come to talk to you about, our annual report, not annual, quarterly report. So our first thing is board membership and recruiting. So, sorry, I just heard the echo. I don't like that.
Yeah.
We recently recruited Suyash just through online means, and then Isaiah graduated out of the program. So, yeah.
Love it.
So, our Healthy Beverages Initiative, you might remember from our last report, that was going smoothly, but sadly, the coalition that the youth were involved with that has now disbanded. So, while we had made major progress with that, and we did present something to you, we're no longer be able to do that. Our next thing is the National League of Cities Congressional City Conference. I personally went along with Mira and Nosley out of the Youth Commission, and we had a great time. We met with senators as well as a representative, Cardea Yavero. Sorry. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. But at the NLC, it was very fun. I had a great time learning, although sometimes the workshops are a little boring. Of course, it's a conference. I thought it was a great opportunity to learn for me to especially just be more engaged in civics and stuff like that. The next thing is our 2023 priority project, Progress in Public Health. June 3rd, we hosted a charity live stream event for the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Denver. And although we only raised $10, it was a very fun experience to go with. And in the future, I'm glad to do more events like that. The 2023 priority project, Progress Community Engagement, is just stuff we've done an assortment of. Since it's only just started basically in the year, our main focus has been the charity live stream, but we've also done our Farmers Highline Canal cleanup. And then we also plan in the summer to volunteer at Pride and then maybe at a volunteer appreciation. We're still sorting that out, however. We also did a flower bed upkeep, which was very fun. There was these little flowers that we planted, and hopefully they were amazing, beautiful, But then afterwards, of course, we just played some games. It was very fun. If that day was also the day where it was started to rain just really suddenly and really heavily, so we're glad that we got it out of the way. And my last thing is upcoming summer volunteering. Of course, I mentioned this will be the Pride event that we're hoping to have a booth at. And, just hopefully other fun things that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I really appreciate you coming forward and presenting the activities. And having spent some time with all three of you on the sidelines of DC, it was really quite a treat. So I wanted to make sure you knew that. And I only have one thing. I know that the initiative, the Healthy Beverage Initiative, was not a success. But I would encourage you not to be totally disparaged, because sometimes there's other ways to be able to skin the cat, so to speak, another way to maybe achieve what you're trying to do. And it requires some creative thinking. So even though, maybe you ran into a speed bump with this particular approach, I would encourage you to kind of dialogue with key stakeholders. And if you feel passionate enough that it's worth re-engaging or trying to figure out a new approach, something different. And part of that, the reason why I say that is we here on the days, we had discussions about that as well. Whether you use punitive measures or you use incentivizing and things of that nature, I would encourage you to continue to do that if indeed that's something that you want to pursue again in the next year. So please do not be discouraged. Yes, government moves slow, but if there's enough people that you can kind of get into the boat and get aligned, once in a while, I think you see some successes. So.
Okay, thank you. We will always try for the youth.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say I admire the Youth Commission. Thank y'all for your time and, being involved so young. My town didn't offer anything like this, or I would have done it. And I just think seeing young people involved in civics and government at a young age is so important. So thank you for everything. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you very much, as everyone else has said, and make sure you take that back to your group and tell them how much we appreciate your work, and look forward to seeing you at the Pride Fest. I think your booth is going to be next to the dice table, so look forward.
Thank you. I'm sure they love your words of encouragement.
Councilmember Brown?
You did great.
Oh, thanks.
And I just want you to know I look forward to working with you guys on the Youth Commission once we come back to school, and I'm already working a little bit with, I'm going to mess up his name. Tell me it again. Siwash. I always put an R in there for some reason, but you guys are fantastic, and I enjoyed meeting with you the other night. It's a great time. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Alex, great job. I appreciate everything because I see how hard you all work and how much time you dedicate in between all your studies and everything else that you have going on. So I just wanted to really acknowledge that. And going to NLC, that was a big deal. You all did a fantastic job representing the City of Colorado's youth with our representative, Caraveo, and that was noticed. So keep that up. And also, you guys beat me at burrito dodgeball, which I had never done before until a couple weeks ago. I really enjoy being the liaison to the group, mostly because I get to see how hard you are working towards elevating our youth and making sure that our youth's voices are heard. So great job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Councilmember Long?
I just want to say this. I'm so impressed with your poise and your confidence and your willingness to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you. I am nervous though, don't worry.
It's not showing.
That's it.
Alex, nice job. Thank you for being here. We appreciate the report.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
All right, our next presentation is the 2023 legislative session recap. Our city lobbyists are here. Come on up. Present this recap to council. It was a fiery session. Tell us all about it.
We're both smiling.
You're still standing. That's the exciting part.
Fiery session is right.
Yes, I know. Is the presentation coming up on the screen?
The clicker, just hit the right arrow.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Ed, do you want to put that down?
Okay.
So it's easier to balance. Hopefully you can still hear us, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. There we go. There we go. Okay. Okay. So thank you for having us this evening. It's great to be here. On behalf of Edemy, we want to thank you for allowing us to represent the city of Northglenn. It is quite an honor and a privilege.
And thank you to the staff, as well as the legislative committee, who spent hours and hours this session, both meeting here at City Hall, but also coming down to the Capitol as needed. So thank you.
Yep. Okay, so to give a, oh, here we go. To give a wrap-up of the legislative session. So the legislative session ended May 8th, so the legislature was in 120 days. Per the Constitution, they did take up the whole 20 days. And just to refresh everyone's memory, the majorities down at the Capitol, the Democrats hold what's known as a trifecta. So they have a majority in the House and the Senate, and then Governor Polis is a Democrat as well. And so you can see what the majorities are in the House. The Democrats hold a supermajority. That's the first time that the legislature has ever held a supermajority of that size for either party. The Senate, very close to the supermajority. So some of this dictates the legislation that we saw introduced this session as well, too. We saw, okay, I'll have to remember that spot. We saw a total of 683 bills, which is roughly around what we normally see in the session, maybe a little less. Of those bills, about, I think close to 500 passed. The governor does have until the 7th, Wednesday, to sign or veto bills. So he's coming up to that deadline. So we'll know for sure exactly how many bills fully pass the legislative process here in a couple of days. The legislature continues to be more and more diverse each and every session. And then what made this session a little bit unique, I'm sorry, I am having all kinds of, okay, there we go. We had 34 new members of the legislature this year. That is a staggering number, yes, including our own North Glen representative as well, too. So, you know, it's a challenge when you have that many legislators, right? A third of the legislature is brand new. But it's also an opportunity as well. And certainly an opportunity for the city. As I had mentioned, we have one of our own that's now in the Capitol. Some of the themes that we wanted to mention briefly, we did see a lot of social justice issues that were front and center down at the Capitol. Of course, as I mentioned, there were a lot of new members. I imagine after this interim and as we go into next session, we're going to see a little bit more, maybe perhaps confidence in some legislators. Maybe more engagement with some other legislators as well, too. It's tough being brand new down there. It's certainly an intimidating building and an intimidating process. And we saw a ton of party line votes, as you can imagine. And some of that may be due to the fact that there were so many new members. There were, some legislators that maybe didn't want to step out and vote against the party. So we did see that as a common theme as well.
And for some new members, it may have been the first elective office they ever held. For some new members, it may have been literally their first time in the Capitol since their third grade tour. Now, they may bring other backgrounds, attributes that are important as well, but as Jennifer said, each legislator has kind of a growing process, depending on their background and where they came from.
Yep. A few observations, the Denver Post, or maybe it's Colorado Politics, does like a winners and losers from the legislative session. And kind of from our perspective, we wanted just to highlight a few. K-12 education, it was a great year for K-12 education. The legislature bought down the budget stabilization factor, otherwise known as the BS factor, by what, 130 million?
180.
180 million, excuse me. And the budget stabilization factor will be done by next fiscal year. So that is quite impressive and quite an achievement for the state. House rules, there was a lot of unruliness, especially in the House this session as it related to basically kind of 5 members of one party and maybe a few of the other party that filibustered a lot. And that really kind of delayed some of the progress that was taking place in the House. So rules were adopted to limit debate on certain bills and really just made the functioning of the House chamber move along a lot more smoothly. Moderation, actually, was a winner this session, even though it maybe wouldn't seem like it would be with the Democratic majorities that we saw in both of the chambers. But in fact, and we'll pull up a few bills that did not make it across the finish line that were introduced from the progressive side. And then just noting a couple of losers, if you will, not to be too crass about it. Governor Polis, he suffered his first legislative defeat this year with the land use bill going down. Second, just to mention, House Minority Leader Mike Lynch is a wonderful individual, a true statesman. He just lost control of some of his party members. Some of the House Republicans really caused a little bit of a ruckus in the Capitol chamber.
The state budget is one of the few things the legislature has to do each year. This is a picture of the U.S. domestic economic growth and the U.S. gross domestic product. You can see the blip during COVID, and then the U.S. economy kept right on chugging. Looking at Colorado, that's our general fund. That's the general tax revenues that the state collects, primarily income tax, but also state sales tax. That's been on that upward roller coaster ride for quite some time, slowing down at the top. Some of the highlights of general fund, as Jennifer mentioned, $1,000 per student increase in K-12 funding, 10% increase in state support higher ed with a tuition cap, one-time allocations for workforce, for housing, some other things, a new Black Hawk helicopter for firefighting for the state, and a 15% general fund reserve. Anybody who's been around the Capitol long enough knows that the good times don't always last. We will have to go back and cut the budget at some point when the economy changes.
Mm-hmm. So some major policy bills we want to mention as we start talking about some specific legislation. So some priority pieces for both parties. There was an auto theft bill, and we actually supported this bill. This removes the monetary value of a car for it to be considered a felony instead of a misdemeanor offense. And criminals are smart. They figured this one out, right? Yep. So this bill was introduced pretty early on in the legislative session, bipartisan support. It was able to pass the full process. There was a big piece of legislation on working to improve the air quality in the state, mainly along the I-25 or the Front Range corridor. The bill did run into some issues with certain industries, business community, et cetera, and it eventually had to be cut down a little bit. But there are still there's some language in there that makes it a little bit easier to file complaints, especially as it relates to oil and gas industry. But also it sets up a task force this summer that's going to be looking at air quality measures. Go. Legalizing mushrooms. So the voters passed. In November, they legalized mushrooms, the consumption of mushrooms in these natural health centers that will now be put up around the state. I will say, though, that this was one of the bills that we worked with CML along the way to try to get local control in this bill. Very similar to when marijuana was legalized. There was a lot of local control put in around what, how local governments can regulate, license, all of those things with marijuana. But that did not happen with mushrooms, essentially because there was no corresponding language to that effect in the ballot measure. So the legislators and especially legislative leadership really did not want to get away from what the voters approved in November. So that's why we didn't see any local control pop up in that bill. There were various gun safety bills that were introduced. All of them passed except one. So there's now some, new restrictions on the age for when you can purchase a weapon, red flag laws. There's also gun manufacturers do not have certain liabilities, do not have certain protections anymore as it relates to gun safety measures. Public employee protections. This bill was seen as kind of an extension of collective bargaining, if you will, but it essentially, it repeats some of the things that the city already has in place as it relates to allowing employees to participate in certain political processes when out of work. This one did pass. There was some work done by CML and the school districts to a certain extent to try to exempt themselves out of this. That was not successful. Two pieces of legislation we want to point out, and this is kind of what we mean as it relates to moderation was more of a winner. Two pieces of legislation that really came from the Progressive Caucus in the House did not make it across the finish line. One was rent control. House Bill 1115 did not put in place rent control measures. It simply would have allowed a local government to put in rent control measures. That bill did not make it. And then the Fair Work Week bill, House Bill 1118. This was a bill targeted more at the retail restaurant industry that would require employers to follow certain scheduling guidelines, would require them to have, to pay employees for not scheduling them, those kind of things. This bill also did not make it out of the first chamber, or actually out of its first committee. Oh, there's my little strike-throughs. There they go. Okay.
Couple of major bills towards the end of the session. Colorado has a biennial property reassessment cycle. Every 2 years, your property is revalued, and it's revalued this year on around May 1st. Everybody the property owners got their property valuations as of June 30th, 2022. That was kind of the high point of the real estate market. Since then, a lot of people suspect, and the sales data would show many of the sales prices have come down, but the valuation is done as of the prior June 30th, and that sets the value for the next 2 years. In many of the Front Range communities, the values were up 40% over the previous 2 years. In some of the mountain communities, they were double that. The legislature wanted to try and address this. In the last week of the session, they came up with Senate Bill 303, which lowers the assessment rates for both residential and non-residential properties. If you qualify for the senior homestead exemption, it can now be portable. So seniors who have lived in their homes for more than 10 years get that tax break. It's generally considered about $600 to $700. Right now, if the qualifying senior moves to a different location, the 10-year clock starts again. If this is adopted by the voters, that would make it portable. Also, requires voter approval to debruce a portion of the state's Tabor refund for 10 years and using that to help backfill certain local governments. Again, this has to go to the voters for approval in November. Related to that, the backfill is coming from your Tabor refund, so voters will be giving up a portion of their Tabor refund. Related to that is a bill that was introduced in the last day, 118, House Bill 1311, and passed to make Tabor refunds identical. So since Tabor passed, the state has used a variety of mechanisms to provide the Tabor refund. You would remember last September, October, every taxpayer got their $750 check right before the election, right? Anyway, you know what I mean. Everybody got their $750 check. That was only a one-year type of Tabor refund. This would do something similar, and the estimate is a $661 check. So regardless of your income or how much you may have paid in, the Tabor refunds are made the same for everybody. Again, contingent on a vote of the people. The Tabor refunds are forecasted to go down in the next few years, in part just because of the economic changes. The voters cut the income tax rate last year, and there will be another proposal this year to do more of that. So all of those things reduce the Tabor refund.
And then everyone's favorite bill, Senate Bill 213, the land use bill. I know we know a lot about this bill. When was that, Ed? In April, we came and gave an update. A lot happened with this bill along the way, right? We got this bill to a good place as it passed the Senate. And I think, as most of you all know, just to refresh your memories, the bill was dramatically altered in the House. A lot of those mandates that we were worried about that took away local control were put back into this bill in the House. It did pass the House, and the Senate, there was a lot of procedural things that happened the last couple of days of the legislative session on this bill. But essentially, the Senate had two choices. They could either adopt the House version of the bill, or they could adhere to their position and force a conference committee on the bill, and request a conference committee, excuse me. Three things, actually. Before the Senate took any action, there was a lot of internal negotiations between the Senate, the House, and the governor's office. And this all happened essentially on the last day of the session, and they could not reach a compromise. They could not figure out how to move forward with the bill, so eventually the bill died on the calendar. It was not brought up for any final action, which meant the bill essentially died, which was support, which we supported, the bill dying. Again, want to, of course, thank members of North Glen for coming down and testifying after many hours and listening to that testimony. But we certainly gave great testimony to the Senate committee on this bill, and this one was certainly, I would say, the fight of the session, especially as it related to the city. Okay, a few specific bills for North Glen that we wanted to point out. There were several law enforcement bills. We did take positions on 3 of these. Another big win for us was a bill, House Bill 1169, which would have prohibited our law enforcement from making arrests. Instead, they would have to issue summons for certain low-level offenses, some petty crimes, but also more importantly, some municipal offenses for which there is not a state equivalent. And some of those are offenses, trespassing, soliciting, stopping the flow of traffic, public urination, those kind of things, that sometimes our law enforcement needs that ability, or just the threat of an arrest to be able to deter that action, right? Especially as it relates to keeping the public safe. We did engage in some negotiations and stakeholder meetings on that bill. We did work with CML, and ultimately, we were able to get that bill for the sponsor, to postpone indefinitely that bill. So that bill did go away. I did mention the motor vehicle theft bill, Senate Bill 97, and then Senate Bill 22. We did take a position of support on this bill. This would have upped the felony level for an individual who used a weapon during certain crimes. There is a mistake on that PowerPoint. That bill actually did not make it out of the Senate. So that bill did not pass. So that should be a fail right there, but we did take a support position on that one. Oh, sorry, Ed, hold on one more. There.
Brief bill, Senate Bill 150 requires labeling on disposable wipes, just telling people not to throw them in the sewer and whatnot and flush them and things. That bill did pass.
That was one of the more interesting committee hearings I've been to with all the pictures.
Yes. And a bill that we had supported, House Bill 1202, the Overdose Prevention Center, which would have just allowed local governments to consider opening these. That passed the House and died in the Senate.
Couple of things we want to point out that did not happen that are also considered big wins for us. There was never a micro-trenching bill introduced. So this one was fun to track and watch throughout a lot of the legislative session. So micro-trenching is essentially just, burying certain utility lines, broadband lines, very at a low depth. But it would have taken away local control from us to be able to approve that. We would have had to create a whole new special permitting process just for micro-trenching, as well as we didn't know some of the long-term impacts of micro-trenching as well, too. We were able to convince the sponsor to not even introduce the bill. So that was a good win.
There was a bill on the Open Records Act, which in its draft form would have given the press and the media free access to open public records. There was a lot of concern with that. The draft kept changing, then it was modified, a lower fee, and then finally there was no differentiation between the press and the public. So when that bill was introduced, I think we really didn't have any more concerns with it. So frankly, that's the way the process, in my mind, should work. If a bill is floated and there's lots of concern, it gets scaled back.
Yep. So our engagement, we tracked 38 bills. So we watched a lot. We took 8 positions. Some of those changed from monitor to support, or amend to oppose, or oppose to amend, vice versa. So we did take 5 support positions. 3 of those bills did pass. 2 of them did not make it. We took 3 opposed positions. 2 of those died, and 1 of those bills were amended down. I will say those were probably 3 very impactful bills for the city. One was the land use bill. The other one was the not arresting for low-level offenses. And then the last one that was negotiated down was the anti-growth bill, that we did work with our legislative delegation on that bill to make sure there were some amendments in there that extended timeframes, that further defined anti-growth, those kind of things, to where we were comfortable with that bill at the end. So three good things that happened for the city. As I mentioned, we did testify on the land use bill. We certainly remained engaged with our delegation as we took positions on bills throughout the process, worked with Representative Wilford, Senator Winter, as well as our adopted Senator Mullica as well, too, that we still consider part of our delegation. But we did also work with CML on many bills. They were obviously a great partner and a great resource for us as well, too, as we engage on a lot of these pieces of legislation.
So now we're off to the interim committees. And there are lots of interim committees this summer. And some of them we have listed here. Interim committees on child welfare, definition of recidivism, school finance task force that is kind of an annual interim committee, air quality, and then a task force on individuals with disabilities and what the state can do and what the state should do to better support individuals with disabilities. Then there are all the standard interim committees.
Yeah.
Joint Budget Committee, leadership, transportation, water, other things.
Right. And along with the individuals with disabilities interim committee, they're going to look at accessibility, especially accessibility of public buildings. There were a few pieces of legislation that we tracked that would have had an impact on the city. And I think it's great that we're now looking at them in an interim committee to see some best practices.
And then there's always an election, it seems. In Colorado this year, as an odd-numbered year, only fiscal measures can be on the ballot. So we'll have those two things that we already mentioned, the Proposition HH. There are other items that are proposed at this point. Limitations on property taxes are proposed, and further reductions in the state income tax. So as I always say to everybody, be careful what you sign. Read the fine print on all this stuff. Well, you may like it, you may not, but make sure you're informed. It will be a pretty light year since it's only fiscal measures, though. Finally, as we look towards the summer and the fall and look towards 2024, we want to maintain our engagement with the delegation. Jennifer and I will be watching the interim committees. Participate in stakeholder meetings. There's already talk about what housing will look like for next year and land use, whether it will come back in a similar fashion or something else. So prepare for land use 2.0 if that's what comes back. Next year will be an election year for the legislature, the 2024 session. So if we thought things were wild, what was it? Wicked something earlier. Things will be ramped up even more next year.
Yeah. Yep. So thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate it. We're
Thank
happy
you.
to, answer any questions or.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ed and Jennifer, thanks for the presentation. And I wonder if you can go back to slide 20.
All these
And
transitions.
maybe I'm subjecting you to pain because of that quirky remote.
Okay.
Oh.
So this is.
But slide 20 says North Glen's performance.
Oh,
And I'm just trying to understand that. I mean, is it really truly the city of North Glen being accountable for that level of performance? Or is it just working through you all as our lobbyists? So is that slide titled appropriately here?
Oh, well, representing the city, the positions we took, the bills we took positions on, really. So North Glen's interests at the Capitol, maybe, something like that would be.
I know there were a lot of people that spent a lot of time, even folks here on the days. So I'm not trying to dilute, but I think you guys did a lot of the work.
Well, it's always a team effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I have a follow-up question. You mentioned red flag early on, I think,
Yes.
Jennifer, and I wonder if you can expand on that, because I thought we already had red flag laws in the state. Was there some additional changes, modification? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Oh, I am drawing a complete blank. I feel like the session was 2 months ago.
They made it easier to
To enact a red
Yes.
flag law?
Yes.
Right.
They expanded reporters, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a broadening of the existing red flag law, an expansion of it.
Okay, and so what does that expansion entail?
I apologize on that one. I don't think we were engaged on that
We
for
weren't.
any of our clients, so
Okay.
I don't really remember the specifics.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you follow up with me on that?
Yes.
Sure.
Yep.
I'd like to understand that a little bit
Yes,
more. Thank you.
absolutely.
Councilmember Long?
Yeah, I'm going to run you through a bunch of pages, if it's all right. Let's jump to page 8. I've got a question for you on that one.
That's the general fund?
U.S. economy.
Oh, U.S. economy, okay,
And the general fund comes right after that one.
okay,
Our,
All right.
ours are a little different.
yeah. We'll get there.
Sorry, yeah. Eep. Oh.
There you
There we
There
go.
you go. So I want to know who's wearing the green eye shades, coming up with this answer. So I looked down at the source down below, and it says the Legislative Council staff, March 2023, along with the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, is saying that we're going to have a growth in America. In the face of the inflation and everything else coming at us,
That is the nonpartisan staff, the economists at Legislative Council, and that is their projection.
nonpartisan staff.
Yes. Legislative Council is nonpartisan. They have the staff of about 7 or 8 economists who work on staff.
So that's why you see the same thing reflected in page 9 when we look at Colorado's economy,
Right.
same kind of juice.
And those are the percentages you see in those gray-blue bars over at the right.
Yeah.
The minus 3% for 22, 23, and then 3.3 and 4%. The general fund is really related primarily to state income tax. And one of the things we found, if you look at the previous page where you had the downfall
Yeah.
during COVID, you don't see that slide down on the general fund. And that was a surprise to many of the economists that I just mentioned. The COVID slowdown didn't affect the high wage earners. It affected a lot of people in the retail industry. But the state tax revenue continued to come in. And they're projecting it will continue that way, though they emphasize at a slower rate, and they always emphasize all of these things are projections and subject to change, and they give a lot of qualifications about the war in Ukraine, inflation, and other economic uncertainties. But that's their projection.
And the bubble coming from the border,
And,
how
and
that will affect us.
and lots of other things, yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you. That's very
Yeah.
excellent response.
Yeah.
I'm going to slip over to page 13 now.
Tabor? Or was that
Property
land use?
tax.
No, property
Is that-
tax.
Oh,
Yeah.
property tax.
Sorry.
Yep.
Yeah. I cannot tell you the calls that I've had from my neighbors, friends in this city that are in my ward that look to me to say, what's going to happen now? Should we be challenging our assessments?
Yep.
Mine was 70%. Mine was 150,000. I mean, it's ridiculous, some of the numbers we're looking at.
Yeah.
So I think the legislature probably took a real deep breath with this one and tried to figure this out. And then you say the backfill's coming from the Tabor refund. But yet there's a piece of legislation or something we're gonna vote on that says, no, 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 don't take the refund. It's a trick. Have you heard this?
Yes, so this one is referred to the voters, and the voters will have a chance to vote on the package of things in this bill. One of them is giving up a portion of the Tabor refund and using that portion of the Tabor refund to give back to cities, to counties and other local governments, special districts, who are going to lose revenue if this is passed. Because if you lower the assessment rates for residential and non-residential property, basically homes and businesses, those local governments will lose money. So they're trying to use that de-bruised revenue to help those local governments not lose as much money. It is a package of items. It's all under the umbrella of the property taxes and related things, but it does have those other components in there, such as making the senior homestead exemption portable. So it is not all that easy to kind of understand right away. I think if people, and you probably already know this, but if people want to challenge their notice evaluation, if they want to protest, I think it has to be done by Wednesday.
Yeah.
They have to file by Wednesday. It's a 5-week period. You can always file an abatement starting in January, but that can be a multi-year process. But I think it's by Wednesday. June 7th is the deadline.
June 8th.
June 8th, okay, thank you. I knew it was this week, so.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this. I'm sure you guys are smart enough to help me figure this out. Property taxes go up. Special districts survive or die on property taxes across the state. Rural, not so well as maybe metro areas. Am I wrong in that?
Property taxes will go up when the voters approve a mill levy increase or when the values go up. And in this case, the values are going up.
Yeah.
Now, the other component, there's 3 components to calculating property tax: the property's value, the number of mills, and the assessment rate. And the assessment rate, right now for residential properties, and not to get too far afield, but for residential properties, it's about 7%.
Right.
So what that means is, if you own a house, only 7% of it is subject to taxation, basically. But that 7%, in effect, determines the property tax you pay. You compare Colorado to other states, we have very low residential property taxes. Now, that doesn't really help someone who's really on a fixed income and they're seeing a big spike in it. On the other hand, our property taxes on the commercial side are much higher compared to other states. But, you know, when you're just getting a bill, it doesn't really matter what the other 49 states are doing.
So if the voters decide not to take the Tabor distribution,
Right.
those dollars then are, like you say, backfilled into special districts, cities, towns. Is that what you're saying? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what happens.
And I'm trying to figure this, I appreciate the question, I'm sorry if I.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
confused as anybody on this.
Yeah, so this will be presented to the voters. If the voters say no to this measure, then I don't know that there's necessarily a Plan B at this point.
I see.
But there could be a different property tax measure that has been proposed at this point for the ballot, but it would need to go out and get signatures to be on the ballot.
I'm just sharing with you that the confusion of my folks
Yeah.
that share with me, that are calling me, figured that I know how to respond to this. And that's why I'm,
And
in far afield, I'm trying to find the right response for them, in fairness to them.
it's much easier to talk about income taxes or sales taxes
Yeah,
than property
yeah,
taxes.
yeah. The other one is an observation on the schools, the $1,000 per student.
Yeah.
I'm sure I don't know if it came up in debate, but maybe you can share with me whether or not it did. Charter schools have to pay for their own facilities. I don't know if many people know this. Whereas public schools, they just operate with the money they're given per head, per student. But charter schools, with the money that's given to them, they have to take the money that they get per student head, and then they have to find a way to pay for their operations of their facilities and their buildings and mortgages on those buildings. Was that anywhere in the conversation, do you recall?
Not with regards to the $1,000 per student. There are, and again, I don't want to get too far afield on this, I'm happy to do it offline.
And I'm sorry to bore
Yeah.
my other
There
folks
are-
on the dais, I apologize.
It depends if you talk about charter schools, there are some that will operate in a facility from the district and others that have to pay rent.
Correct.
There are some state programs that provide rent assistance just for charter schools. There's differential funding in the at-risk formula for neighborhood schools versus charter schools. So it gets to be a little more cloudy because there's lots of different factors. Some charter schools target at-risk students.
Yes.
Some don't have many at-risk students. Some have a lot of students that have disabilities, some don't have as many. So it's across the board with charter schools. That's just a personal opinion. But that didn't come up with regards to the $1,000 per student, but there was an increase made in the charter school facilities line. I can't remember what it was.
Okay, but there was conversation.
Yes, on that issue, yeah.
Well, Madam Mayor, I'll step away from my list here. I think I've done my due diligence. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being here to respond to us and being here to answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. And certainly on the property tax measure, if I see a really good summary and maybe we need to put it together, we will send it out to everybody, because it is something that, especially as we get closer to the election, people are going to say, I don't even understand this stuff. I know I have to re-educate myself on it.
Well, speaking out loud, on the seniors, for it to be portable, that means you're gonna sell their house. We're gonna sell our house and move. Is that the impetus to get them to sell, because it'll go along with wherever they go? Or are you increasing how much they have? I mean, there's two arguments that you could have on that one. Just say it.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will keep it brief because I was on the legislative committee, so I've seen and heard how hard you've worked, but I wanted to say thank you because I know you've lobbied really hard on our behalf.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make sure I did that shout out and that appreciation, because every voice matters when it comes to changing legislation or getting something moved forward or opposed. So every single voice matters. I wanted to say thank you. And then I cheated a little bit and looked up that red law expansion, what it entails. Historically, it's only been family members and law enforcement that can petition a judge to issue a seizure order, but this bill expands it to healthcare providers, mental health providers, district attorneys, and teachers. It creates an education campaign around the red flag law, and then it also creates a hotline run by the Colorado Department of Public Safety. So that's it, but thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Ed and Jen, I just want to say that you are a class act, like really, your professionalism, the seamless presentation. I'm just so thankful for your advocacy for our city and for your partnership. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And that's all we have, so have a great night.
Okay.
Thank you for all your hard work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You guys did a great job again.
Thank you.
All right, next up, public invited to be heard. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item not set for public hearing. Statements are limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Statements must be related to city business and limited to matters of community interest. Joanna, did anyone sign up to speak to council?
Yes, there is one individual on the list. Name is Walter Toll.
Good evening. Please state your name and address and provide your comments to council.
Yes, my name is Walter Toll. Tell people it's spelled like a dyslexic towel, T-O-W-L-E. I work in, that's for your benefit, Madam Mayor, because last names today can be difficult. I reside at 1445 Elmer Drive, which is in Ward 1. Madam Mayor, Madam Pro Tem, City Council members, staff members, professional camera person, and other people that are here, I'd like to say one thing I like about this country is the idea that I can get up here, express opinions, and maybe some ideas, and for that I thank you for the time. What I'd like to do is let you know I'm not going to be doing any opinions, so you can relax. But I would like to express some ideas and some thoughts. And I think my timing is good in the sense that you have now Beth, and I can't pronounce your last name, so that's two of us. But anyway, I think my timing is good because I listened very carefully to her about some of her objectives, and one of them is traffic. And I have been in the traffic industry for 23 years. We have a company located in Longmont, Colorado, and even though we're located in Longmont, we have a third of our employees that actually live in the city of Northglenn. So what I'm about to propose is something, or some ideas I have. And I'll be honest, I'm not really clear on the procedures, and this may not be the right quorum to do it, but please let me know and I'll silently leave. But one of the things that we notice when we're in traffic, we drive through it every day, we see what's going on. When I started in the industry, the control of the intersections, if you want to call it that, was about the equivalent of a four-function calculator. And things have progressed quite a bit. We all hear Elon Musk and his comments about AI. We see things like electric vehicles. But even more important, we start to see things down the road that are coming our way that involve the traffic intersection communicating with the vehicles themselves to make things a safer world. Not only the vehicles, but also pedestrians, bicycles, and so forth, all in the name of safety. So what I've seen is a progression in the industry over the years. We've come to the point where I would like to propose to the city council members, and perhaps my timing or the way I get about it, maybe I should go through Beth first. I'm not sure if the commission brings recommendations forward or not, but I'd like to give you an invitation. I have a consortium of people that have been working with the 5G world, which is part of the vehicle to interface world, is what they call it V2X now, which is expanded to pedestrians and safety and so on and so forth. One of the things that down the road, as you're thinking 5-10 years down the road, is you're going to need to have 5G capability at your intersections. And I've been working with a consortium of people for about 6 years. They include myself. They include representatives from AT&T. They include representatives from a company out of Israel called No Traffic, which has AI capabilities for vehicle detection, vehicle safety, pedestrian safety, so on and so forth. And also with Nokia. So what I would like to do is offer a presentation. It's not a sales pitch, but I think it's something down the road that should be considered in the city of North Glen. Now, I understand, I have less than a minute, there are budget constraints and so on and so forth, but I'd be willing to bring these people forth to you, give a presentation, either you first or to Beth, or whoever, and I apologize for not knowing this is my first time in the city for this, but at any rate, I would like to propose that this consortium of people that we've put together, been working on for 6 years, at least give a presentation and maybe whet your appetite and show you a fiscal responsible way where you might even be able to get into this with very little investment, in fact, maybe make some money on it. So I thank you for your time and I hope that you consider it, and maybe the next 10 seconds you can tell me which way I gotta go.
Thank you so much, Walter.
All right.
Yes, exactly. So public comment is not a discussion. We heard your 5 minutes and we really appreciate it, but I'm gonna ask City Manager Geyer to follow up with you.
Okay,
on your
we have met
request.
before.
Yeah,
All right.
perfect. So she's your first point of contact.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who did not have a chance to sign up that would like to speak to council at this time? Oh, please state your name and address and provide your comments to council.
Would you rather come up here and sit? Are you sure you're okay down there?
Oh, I'm perfectly fine. It's a lot of fun to be on this side of the dais. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny Wilford, and I live at 10447 LaPan Street in Ward 4. And I am just so delighted to be here with all of you this evening, having participated in the groundbreaking on the new City Hall. And I'm just so excited about that project and all of the possibility that exists within this community. And I'm really proud that North Glen continues to be a leader on sustainability efforts, as well as in particular on opening and building the first net zero all-electric city hall in our state. That is truly something to be proud of. There are a couple of other things that I want to speak to in a moment, but I'm here tonight because I want to make sure that you all know that I, as your state representative, am here and am very happy to hear from you on any issues that you think are something that we should be taking a look at the state legislature. I'm interested in hearing any ideas that you have for the next session, but mostly wanted to share a little bit about my experience in the session as it was my first. So you all came to visit me in February to the Capitol. We had breakfast. We talked about lots of different issues, and so this is me coming to you. I'm glad that you were able to hear a formal update from Ed and Jen. I do have to tell you all that they are truly two of the best lobbyists in the building. They are absolutely everywhere. I swear to goodness, I turn a corner and one of them is there. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. But they, you know, and I will say, I cannot say that about every firm under the dome, and in particular, every firm that represents cities. So you all are in incredible hands, and definitely they are constantly updating me on different positions that you've taken on bills and different issues that are coming up. So thank you for sending them as your liaison. They do a great job every day. So a couple of numbers to share for you all in terms of how this session went. As you know, I served on 2 committees. I served on the State Civic, Military, and Veteran Affairs Committee, and then served on the Energy and Environment Committee as the vice chair, which was a big deal for a first-year lawmaker coming in to be given a position like that. And it was one that I worked really hard to ensure that the committee was run well and that we were passing good policy. I introduced 16 bills, 14 have been sent to the governor, and I believe should be signed by, I think, Wednesday or Thursday when it's his deadline. More than 50% of the bills that I personally introduced were passed or did have bipartisan support. And so worked really hard to develop relationships with my colleagues across the aisle, because I know that that's where good policy is made. And then I did co-sponsor 175 bills, so that simply means supporting and adding my name to a piece of legislation that I believe is important for our community. Couple of highlights, I really tried to focus in on supporting our older adult community, knowing that we do have so many older adults in North Glen as well as in Thornton, and was able to secure $1 million for food boxes for older adults who make less than $18,000. Passed a bill around creating a board that would work to stabilize the direct care workforce. So these are the home health care workers who are coming in to provide care for our older adults in their homes so they can age in place. And then also worked really hard on air quality, and will be a part of the interim committee specifically on air quality over the summer months. So my team and I will be hosting town halls as well as listening sessions throughout the interim. So I invite you to come out and join us and join the conversation, because it's can't just be a one-sided gig. So come out and hang out. And then the other thing I wanted to say thank you for is hosting Pride and for the proclamation tonight. We spent a lot of time this session talking about how are we supporting people as their full selves? How are we supporting their mental health? How are we ensuring that we are providing gender-affirming care that matches a person's identity? Because we know that members of the LGBTQ+ community are constantly under attack. And in particular, people and transgender people have higher rates of bullying, anxiety, and depression. And when a community like North Glen not only establishes a proclamation and flies the pride flag, but also hosts a festival, we are saying to every single resident that you are loved, that you deserve to be seen and heard, but also that you deserve dignity, respect, and support. And so I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you, and I believe that I am out of time. Thank you.
You had 3 more seconds. Is that thing actually going up now? It is. It is.
Yeah, definitely if you're over it, yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to council at this time? Yep. Okay. All right, we will move into communications. Councilmember Walker.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Miss Diana and her staff for an absolutely wonderful board meeting that we had at Central Park in Fox Run. By far the best turnout we've ever had. I can't tell you thank you enough. It went off without a hitch. The food truck was great. The band was great. It was absolutely perfect. So thank you so much, and thank you for the residents who came out and supported it. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and just to echo Councilmember Walker, we had a great Northland Nights Out. Thank you so much to staff and everyone who put it together. The weather cleared up. The Nuggets did also kick off, and despite that, we had a really good turnout. So it was really great. Some interesting things that came out of that for me was the number one question I got asked was, what does city council do? So maybe that's something we can talk about in the future of just like educating and like how do we want to talk about that. The second biggest topic that came up to me was compost. People are itching for some compost here in the city. So I think that's really interesting. We also, I think most of us attended the opening of Representative Caraveo's office down here in Northland, which we're very lucky to have her so close by. So if you do have any questions, like any citizens or, you know, us, we have access to our representative right here in our home city. So that was really, really nice to see. And yeah, hoping, you know, the Nuggets will be back in town for Game 5. Yeah, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Brown.
I actually enjoyed a week without city council business. I don't mean to sound like, you know, I'm bragging or anything. But I do not really have anything to report today. Okay. I was sitting here thinking, did I do nothing last week? But I did.
Thank you. Councilmember Jaramillo.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a while since I've done communications, so I attended the AdCog Sub-Regional Forum meeting and the AC Rev State of the Region, so that was like almost a month ago, so that was May 10th and May 11th. So May 13th, did our strategic planning, which was great, and also it was fun going to the axe throwing. That was fun. I didn't do so hot at first, but now I'm like a pro, so I recommend you guys like go check it out. It's a lot of fun.
Can you sing while you're doing it? Can you karaoke while you're doing it?
Yeah, sure. I'll try it. You put some good music on.
You'll try anything once, huh?
So, yes, other than that, I don't have any meetings until like Wednesdays. So,
Okay.
thanks.
Sorry, Jay. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see, on May 23rd, which, yeah, it seems like a long time ago, the Public Works Open House happened, and I just want to thank staff for all the great work they did and how much fun it is to go in to see what's going on there and see the big equipment and talk to our staff people who can explain how things work and that kind of stuff. And plus, they had food trucks as always, so it was a great event. And then later that day, I did speak at the Sustainability Forum that our Sustainability Task Force put together here in North Glen. And I just want to say that we had speakers, we had one speaker remote from India, we had all kinds of speakers. But the group from the city of Denver was very impressed with North Glen and our net zero city council building. And I felt really good on behalf of North Glen that we were showing up Denver. But, and then on June 3rd, in the morning, I went to the paddle and run event that we had going on here in the city. Oh, and May 27th was the Chalk Festival. So we have so many wonderful events going on in our city, and it's amazing. Family events, all kinds of things. I think both of those were, well, the Chalk Festival was very well attended. The paddle and run contestants did a great job. It was kind of rainy, but they still did their running and paddling across our Webster Lake. Then I was at the Yadira Caraveo ribbon cutting, and it is, I think it's something I hope our residents will take advantage of, because in her introductory speech, she did point out that she is representing all the residents of Congressional District 8. Doesn't matter what party you are or anything. So you can stop by and talk to her staff or get information about how to talk to her. And so I think it's a good thing for the city to have her in our city. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to work in reverse chronological order. Starting off with this morning, I attended the first in-person Rocky Flats Stewardship Council meeting. And I must say that Mayor Coleman, as the chairwoman, does a really good job in managing a very tough crowd of residents. And the one comment that I do want to make is that a lot of times people fear things that they don't understand. And part of the role of the Stewardship Council is to not necessarily fix things, but to provide information and to do that in a way, factual information to help allay concerns of the residents. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about, given my former Navy nuclear experience, is that I'm going to be taking Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Yaramillo, the city manager, and several staff from M&O on a tour here on Wednesday. And I think part of that is just to really understand how that facility was closed and all the remediation efforts taken to make sure that the exposure to man-made radiation and contamination has been minimized to the best possible way. And I was hoping that Jen and Ed would be here because just like them, today, we struggled with the AV system and the advancing the slides. It was kind of funny. But nonetheless, what is really important here, I think, and my point, is to be able to talk about things in a very candid way, in a factual sort of manner, and to have candid conversations is so important to getting people aligned. And I think this is something that we will continue to struggle on the Stewardship Council, but the nice part about it is doing it in person, and we're going to have more meetings in person, I think will be very helpful for that interaction, both among the directors on the board as well as with the residents. We had Finance Committee meeting back on May 30th, and the audit was completed. I don't think I'm allowed to say about that, the result, but we'll let Jason announce that in due course. I did attend the senior Big Top, and this is the funny part of my comments. I ran into my old Northglenn Junior High School, no, Northglenn Middle School, social studies teacher. I had no idea. She didn't know who I was, and I couldn't recognize Linda Wolf, who is a resident in Ward 3. It was kind of funny because she said, yeah, my dad's brick, the word army is spelled Amri, wrong. So I asked her, I said, well, ma'am, here's my card, and, can you give me the spelling of your dad's name, and how about your name? And she wrote down Wolf, and I said, are you Linda Wolf? And she said, yes. So the point that I'm making here is, and I'm not trying to brag about myself, but I think it was a nice meeting of a teacher, and the teacher realizing the student kind of doing something good. Although I don't know if I'm doing good, I struggle. I'm trying to do my best at it, but it was a really nice opportunity to meet together. And then back on Memorial Day, I did represent the city at the USS Colorado Memorial commissioning, and of course, there were quite a few people there from county, as well as Representative Caraveo. So very, very happy to have represented the city. I was in uniform, so I was mainly there as a veteran. But I'm glad that we're getting a lot of good press. And when I say good press, the Immortals, they've been on TV a lot lately, and I spend a lot of time at the pool, so they've been keeping me alive and well. So that's all that I have to report.
Councilmember Long.
I want to thank everyone who participated tonight in setting it up from the staff standpoint. It went without a hitch in terms of the weather and everything else and all the planning that you thought ahead. It was very good, and I thank you for my helmet. I'll take that into my garden. No. I want to say, first off, the North Metro Fire Rescue District said goodbye to myself and Jenny Murphy and a guy named by the name of Bob Nielsen from Broomfield. We're term limited, and they were very, very supportive in our last breath, as you might say, sitting on the dais there in that board. But I'm happy to report that Councilman Kondo was sworn in as the new director, and it looks like he's headed to be the treasurer, which I'm so supportive of, and thank you for stepping forward, as you did. The audit was also presented. Yours truly was head of the audit committee at the time, and I can report that the North Metro Fire Rescue District is in great shape, probably the best shape they've ever been in, and they're going to need to be, because 2 more fire stations are coming up with the growth of the communities around us, and it heralds in a whole new era of people and traffic and being aware and fires and what have you. I was going to quiz our lobbyists about this report that finally came out on the Marshall Fire. I mean, it took our North Metro Fire Rescue District 2 months to come up with lessons learned. It took over 18 months for the state to come up with what their findings were. And quite honestly, folks, it's still not adequate. That's just my personal opinion on this. The last thing I'll share with the North Metro Fire District, I'm sure all of you got this in the mail. It's a public opinion thing on the North Metro Fire District. They too are in need of extending their mill levy this year for continuing the capital assets that they utilize. So I would encourage you to answer this and be aware of the fact that they're here as your best people you could ever imagine when it comes to frontline fires and whatever. And you've heard me expound about the Marshall Fire and the unsung heroes and everything that took place. I mean, it is incredible what these folks are all about. I'm so proud to have been part of it. And I think Councilman Kondo will take the handoff readily and do a great job. The second thing I want to talk about is Memorial Day. The veterans. This gentleman here showed up in his captain's uniform, spit polished, shining shoes, introducing himself to everyone, huge star on the sleeve. The veterans that recognized a Navy captain said so and gave him a salute. This is a very modest man, but I must tell you, the pride we should have for what he has done in the service of this country is nothing short of spectacular. And I'll share this with you too. He gave us a tour of the USS Colorado replica and starts telling my wife and I what the size of the guns are, the size of the shells, how thick the steel is on. I mean, he went through the whole entourage of sharing with us his Navy understanding of things. I was very impressed, and I want to thank you, Rich, for that kindness. It's very moving to hear him share, but I think I want to impress upon everyone here, too. When the veterans walk up, Navy vets who have been there and back again, Korean veterans, Korean War veterans, Vietnamese veterans, even there was a World War II vet, too. They salute this gentleman because of his service, and we should do the same. And lastly, you're probably wondering why I'm dressed like this tonight. Well, the third thing I want to share is that I attended on Saturday, which is why I was not at the Caravale opening, the Order of Indian and Western History Writers, of which I am a member. There's about 150 of us. We had our big symposium on Saturday, and we gave special recognition to the Native Americans in our community. And I want to share with you that it was the Southern Arapaho that were in this neck of the woods. I mean, that's what I was challenging my historian pals about, because I knew that this would be taking place today. So anyway, I want to honor those folks and the indigenous people that were once here. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually do want to thank Councilmember Kondo for your service. I did hear about you showing up at the memorial. I was not able to attend, but from some of the commissioners I talked to, in your full dress uniform, so I want to acknowledge that as well. I attended the senior Big Top on May 31st as the liaison to the NSO. And it was just a great opportunity to connect with our seniors, but also you just never know who you're going to meet. One of the seniors there was the son of the very first Ward 3 council member from 1969, John Huey. So John Huey's son was there. His name is Greg. And his wife is a Holstrom, as in Holstrom K through 8. So her uncle, the school was named after her uncle. So that was pretty awesome. I really enjoyed attending that event. Other than that, I attended Caraveo's open house as well. It was great networking, a great chance for her support. As others have mentioned, as residents, please take advantage of that, because it is kind of a big deal that we have our representative here in North Glen. I am very excited. I did speak with Commissioner Baca on Saturday as well, and I want to thank Councilmember Jaramillo for helping connect me to join the Hispanic Heritage Committee, so I can participate and support my Puerto Rican heritage. I'm very excited about that, to represent our community. So thank you so much for that connection. And I do want to give one shout out. If you haven't noticed, our police department have been posting a lot of great videos. So shout out to our new PIO, I think, who's hit the ground running. It is amazing to see those backstories of each and every one of our officers, and why they decided to join the police force, especially as we look at retention and recruiting. I think it's important for other folks to see who our police force are made of and why they decided to join. And that is all I have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, I don't want to repeat a ton of things, but I do want to circle back to the paddle and run, because I'm not sure everyone knows that a former council member won first place, is the female, Jordan Sowers.
Oh, nice.
And she also sent a lovely email to Heather and I, just complimenting the staff. She, runs races and is active across the Front Range, and she could not have been more complimentary of the organization and the kindness and the courtesy of all of our city staff. So that was a lovely email to get, but also congrats to her. Let's see. Oh, just a congrats, really big congratulations to the entire class of 2023. They've all graduated since we've met. And just kind of happy summer to all of our students, but also a reminder to all of our residents, not that we shouldn't do this all the time, but especially in the summer, just to slow down, because we have more kids at home playing in their neighborhood streets, riding their bikes, running down to the pool and just being active outside, and we want to make sure that they're safe in their neighborhoods. The City Hall groundbreaking tonight was the best part of today. It was so much fun. And just, I wanted to shout out a couple of people, AMD, that is the architects team. And I mean, I could not be more excited for this building. It's beautiful. FCI bringing them back for a third major project in our city. But really, 3 cheers to our staff, because the coordination behind the scenes, it's such a big deal. They have worked tirelessly on this project, coordinating all of those people and us at the same time. And then finally, I'm just really proud of our city. The Pride Proclamation tonight was so beautiful, and I'm going to quote actual Councilmember Kondo, because what you just shared earlier about something else I think also applies here, which is people fear things they don't understand. And as soon as you said that, that's what came to mind for me today, because I feel like there's misunderstanding about what the Pride Month and what celebrating Pride is. And it's really about creating a safe community that is inclusive, with kindness as the general theme. And so I'm just really proud of our city. I'm sad to miss the event on Saturday. I will be out of town. And then just a small reminder to all of council that sometimes our actions speak louder than our words. And so I'm going to end it there. City Clerk Small, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you, Mayor and City Council. Just want to announce that the 2023 candidate guidelines are now available for the November 7th election. So for anybody interested in running for City Council, everybody is welcome to stop by the City Clerk's office and pick up a paper copy and all of the attachments. You can also view them online on the city's website on the candidate page, Or if you're interested, send me an email at jsmall@northglenn.org, and I will send a copy directly to your inbox. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Guyer?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few updates for council this evening. I mentioned previously that staff, I believe in an email, that staff met with Magali LaFont, excuse me, with Safeway. She's in charge of asset control prevention. As part of a follow-up to that meeting, Jessica Holtz, our crisis response unit program manager, met with her today on site, along with meeting the store manager of Safeway and several others, so that way they know who she is. And she's provided her contact information to the store staff. So that's part of a next step effort in terms of really building a partnership with Safeway. I still do owe council a detailed email in terms of other next steps that are underway. They are making security improvements in terms of having on-site security, but really won't be sharing anything beyond that in a public venue in order to keep their security enhancements confidential as to make sure they're effective. So I will share more with you in an email this week. Chief May and I attended a detox crisis center meeting with the sheriff a couple weeks ago. We have a second meeting coming up here next week. The goal is to pull together a regional partnership of both Board of County Commissioners and then chiefs, city managers from each of the different municipalities. Right now, the path we're headed on is to probably be bringing back some type of memorandum of understanding to our local jurisdictions, outlining the envision, collaboration, and goal of standing up a detox center. Many details to figure out, but that'll be the first step. So I'll provide an update in a couple weeks on that via email, since we'll have the breaks with the meetings. A quick reminder, if you have not let Susan Baca know that you want to attend the NLC City Summit in November 15th through 19th, early registration ends soon. So please reach out to her if you have not done that. And also you want to reach out to her because you want her to secure room reservation for you. Hotels always fill up fast. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney Hoffman?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Just one item to follow up on an email I sent if you weren't able to view it today. The United States Supreme Court denied a petition for cert from an individual who sought review in the United States Supreme Court on a case that started, frankly, with a municipal court summons for blocking the right-of-way in front of the mosque in Northglenn a number of years ago. He appealed that up through Adams County District Court, had a petition for cert denied at the Colorado Supreme Court. He also sought relief in the United States District Court, appealed that to the 10th Circuit, and then after he lost at both of those levels, sought review in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court denied review, so the case is completed after several years, and Northglenn won at every level.
Is it okay to thank you, and I'm just glad to hear the information?
Just wanted to report good news.
Yes. For the residents of Ward 2 that enjoyed that for years, thank you so much. I appreciate that information.
That's it.
Okay. Moving into the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and the consent agenda passes unanimously.
Okay, first resolution tonight, CR 83. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A resolution approving addendum number 6 to the professional services agreement between the City of North Glen and Cumming Management Group Incorporated for project administration services for the implementation of phases 3 and 4 of the Civic Center Master Plan.
Move for approval. Second.
All right, Brooks, I can't say your last name to save my life. I'm just struggling with names, period, today. Brooke is here. He's our Director of Planning and Development, and he will provide a summary. Hello.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Here tonight to consider Resolution 83 with regards to an amendment to the Cumming Management Group Administration Services for the next phase of development for the city. Cumming has worked on the first 2 phases over the last 5 years. This phase contemplates 4 key components: abatement and demolition of the rec center. This is assistance with contract administration and whatnot. Management of the V-Cup, or voluntary cleanup program, that we are currently working on for our Brownsfield grant that we are planning to make application for here as well. And then also the future abatement of demolition of the current city hall, which is included in the current contract. And then lastly, future development coordination for phase 4. I want to point out that this is not a 1-year contract. This is extended out through 2025. Cummings services have been invaluable for us in terms of assisting us with everything that we do throughout all of the phases of this project, from the rec center through City Hall as well as this. So we are looking for a contract amount of $212,942. Staff is recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And also, Cumming is here with Jack Christensen and Nate Richards are here to help answer any questions you may have, but I will try to field them first, and then if I fail, they will correct me and save me from myself. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Brown.
You know, I must have read this like 20 times. You did say Brown, right?
I did.
Thank you. I must have read it, and I don't know why I'm having a roadblock, just a little one.
Yeah.
Cummings is the administrative arm, right? This has nothing to do with the actual demolition or anything like that of the buildings.
Correct.
It's an administrative arm.
Yeah, what they help us with are a couple of things. First, they help us with procurement, so they help us write the proposals and contracts. They help review and screen the vendors for individual tasks within those projects. And then they also, as we are going through the process, they assist with the construction administration and QA/QC to the extent that when we receive pay apps, they review them, they coordinate and help reconcile with the contractor that we'd be working with or consultant, depending on the specific task. Also want to point out that this isn't that what you see in the scope of services is the condensed and concise narration.
Yeah.
We actually have like a 5-page sheet that breaks down every individual subtask and subroutine to all of the individual elements that are embedded in this proposal that you see before you tonight.
So I just have one more question. I'm having a problem with the $212,000. Not that, other than the fact that because it is such a condensed version, none of this was brought into it previously, none of these 4 elements that are in here before.
So
is that why we're doing, I don't know, I'm really struggling with this,
Okay.
Brooke, and I'm admitting it.
So let me provide some perspective. So Cummings has been working in partnership with the staff for 5 years. We do not have the staff expertise that they provide to us in order to have been able to successfully carry out the rec center and to the city hall to this point. Over that 5 years, we've had a total amount of, let me get back to the front page here, $573,000. So when you spread that out over 5 years, we've had 2 of their key staff people assisting us with that program. We're talking about another 3 years between now and 2025, where we're talking about $212,000. So when you spread it out on a yearly basis in terms of what the services they're providing, and I want to also point out that a lot of the stuff that we're stepping into now, which is dealing with federal grant programs and
Right.
things like that, is way beyond most of our staff's skill set. I have done that in my past career, but I haven't touched this type of stuff in over 20 years. So having some additional eyes and additional expertise to help assist us is where they bring value to the project.
I'm absolutely positive that they bring value to the project. I just got confused.
Yeah.
So I really do appreciate
And I think
that.
the other thing that's happened is that with the fact that Continuum Partners, we ended that relationship, we had to pivot and we had to create a new approach and a new game plan. And so when we had presented that to council, one of the things that we had mentioned is we would be coming back with an addendum for them to help it with the new game plan that council gave consensus on. So this is a reflection and following through with what we've previously brought forward to council.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Condo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And actually, to build on that, will this group also help us identify another market developer? Is that also in scope? I was
So
just
part
kind
of
of reading
phase
that.
4 is future development coordination.
Yes.
So they will help us with the mechanics of that, i.e., if we, depending on the direction that we receive from council, if we decide to go out to RFQ, RFP, they will help us put together that paperwork. They will help us with the selection and review of that information. So yes, they will be a part of that, but they're a subset to the bigger picture because there's a lot of interstitial pieces to that will be internal versus them, but it will be a coordinated effort.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to piggyback off of Councilmember Condo's, name
Everybody's
nice.
off on us, Mayor.
It's last name,
Try-
Tuck's last name on Monday.
I think
okay, so-
everyone needs to try to say Brooks' last name.
Svoboda.
Yeah, that one's
It's
easy.
not a consonant blend I can do.
I'm
It's-
Polish,
I'm
so-
struggling with that.
If
Okay.
you wanna-
I'm
if
gonna
you wanna
practice
get really
it.
technical, it's Swoboda, but no, I never say it that way because it sounds so
Swoboda.
horrible that people go, I don't
Swoboda.
even know what you just said.
It doesn't sound English because it isn't. Anyway, my question had to do with, if you could say any more about the redevelopment of the site north of Festival Lawn. So is this CMGI, what are they planning? Or is it, this is what, going out to find a developer? What's going on with
It's
that?
all of that. So what this is essentially additional support staff services for the north half of the property in total.
Okay.
So they are right now in the process, they have been helping us with amending a scope, or creating a scope of services to put together a VCUP application, which is the voluntary cleanup for CDPH&E. They are currently helping us facilitate the review of applications for demo of the rec center. They've helped put together the documents, and they're helping us review that. They'll also help with the final selection and contract negotiations. So that's what they will be doing. They are also going to be helping and facilitating contract administration, procurement, and oversight of the Brownfields grant with the staff, with the consultants that we bring on, and then they will eventually help us with program administration of the grant, assuming we get one. And then that future phase is when we get to a point where we're ready to go back out to market and understand what we're going to do with the property. We'll revisit what the original concept plan that council gave consensus on. We're going to update it. They're going to be a part of that process, and they're going to help us with those mechanical pieces on how we go and execute that
Yeah,
stuff.
okay, the last part of what I was curious
Yeah,
about.
so it is, all of that is what's embedded in this proposed scope of services.
All right, well, thank you.
Councilmember Long?
Mr. Svoboda,
Now we're formal, okay.
I know, I'm gonna practice.
I am quite taken with the whole project management programming. Having been involved with hospital construction and fire station construction, the project managers we have are worth their weight in gold. And I see you're nodding your head to agree. What they do for us is just fantastic. They're the eyes and ears of things that we don't always know what we're looking at. And when it comes to doing estimations, if you want a budget done, these are the best people you could ever hope to have. And their experience and the support that they're providing our staff and Eric, who is spread kind of thin himself, there's not that we don't have talent, we just are spread so thin in terms of these areas. So when these folks show up, I want them to know that I am in full support of everything they stand for. Thank you.
All the comments and questions, well done. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CR 83 passes unanimously.
All right, CR 84. Joanna, will you read the title, please?
A resolution authorizing Navy Federal Credit Union as a tenant at the Webster Lake Promenade Shopping Center.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Eric Enzi, our senior planner, is not in the
I'm
room.
actually not tonight, sorry.
Hello.
I'm stepping in for Eric. He couldn't be here tonight.
Okay.
Unfortunately, had a last-minute emergency. So this is a very straightforward and simple request. When we originally entered in, the city of Northglenn actually owned and controlled the property and entered into a development agreement with Hawkins Development. Jacob Hawkins is here tonight to answer any questions on his end. But essentially, we set out a bunch of parameters as to what the city wanted and didn't want in terms of uses on this site. We embedded that in the land use approvals, and we also embedded it in their declarations on their property. In one very specific instance here, if they want to modify those declarations, they have to come back to city council and get permission, and that's what we're here to do tonight. In this specific instance, nonprofits was specifically excluded. Now, in the time when we entered into this agreement and did their entitlements, the initial expectation of a nonprofit would be a thrift store or a church. And being that this was an urban renewal project, we did not want to have non-income producing uses in this particular property. However, in this particular case, and the reason why we're recommending approval for acknowledging this credit union is that a bank is a use by right in here, and by all certain standards, this is just a nonprofit bank in a 1,500 square foot space. So for our purposes, the intent of what we originally brought forth to council to consider when we established these declarations and the land use approvals did not contemplate a credit union or nonprofit. And so we are recommending tonight to approve this resolution, and I'm happy to answer any questions regarding this, and also Jacob's here to answer any questions if you have any of him.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Goff?
My question is just, can you say where in Webster Lake Promenade this will be?
I believe it's next to Jimmy's, Jimmy John's.
Okay.
Right next to Jimmy John's.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so it's kind of a small space.
It's 1,500 square
Yeah.
feet, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Kondo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm not trying to advocate being a former Navy guy. Actually, I've been a Navy Federal Credit Union client for 38 years. I actually signed up when I went to in the first year of the academy. And what I want to just inform the council is that even though it is Navy Federal Credit Union, it actually serves all 6 services, including the Space Force, our latest and greatest. And first of all, I want to applaud the Hawkins team, because bringing in a credit union like that will actually attract quite a few military veterans, retirees, so on and so forth. And I think that will actually help to bring more traffic to the Westminster Promenade. Not to mention make my life a lot more convenient.
North Glen Promenade, but
Or North Glen Promenade.
yeah,
Did I
Westminster can do their own thing, but we're going to
wait,
keep
Did I say Westminster?
Yeah.
Webster Lake Promenade.
Webster.
I must have had Westminster on my. What? Yeah, she's replaying that. That's great.
I did not mean.
No, it's funny. It's great. Actually, Miss Katie, it's really amazing that you're sitting here and listening to us so patiently.
I love it.
You are? Okay, good. I just wanted to
And we
make
can
sure.
tell how much.
We're trying to make it entertaining for you, as well as for you. But to get back on point, I am fully in support.
Right. I don't see any more questions. Please open the vote.
The vote is open.
Please vote.
I will close that vote, and CR 84 passes unanimously.
Great. Moving into discussion items, we have 2 tonight. The first one is the RTD Partnership Program. Brooke Svoboda, Director of Planning and Development, is here. Just slow down, it'll happen.
I just decided I'd just camp up here and just not walk back and forth, save everybody some time. I'm going to work backwards on this, and instead of giving the overview here, is kind of get to the end game. Staff's not recommending support of participating in this program, primarily because the amount of technical expertise to be able to put together a proposal is just not within our means, and that within the time frame that is available, it doesn't make sense for us to pursue this. And I want to give an example. As you may recall, a few months back, we went to Metro North Smart Commute. See, now it's in the air now, okay?
so sorry.
They came forward with a request for the city to participate in the Call and Ride program between Wagon Road and 144th. They asked for $1,500. And when this came out in the program and we heard from our friends from RTD, the question was that I came up with is I said, hey, how much does that program cost a year to run? It's $1 million. So for us, that is with RTD providing call and ride bus and staff. If we were to take anything like that on, we would have to find a third-party vendor. Potentially, there's capital outlay, there's all these other expenses with this. So I want to say that when RTD was here, this is really a gesture in trying to move forward to a bigger program of sub-regional service planning that I think has been missing in the RTD matrix. For us, we're not well-positioned for it, and I would say, in talking with my counterparts in Westminster and Thornton, they're struggling to find a project to do this with right now. So staff is just, we wanted to come back because it was a question that council was enthusiastic about. We just want to share this information and then just answer any questions, and if you have any direction to provide, we're happy to take it.
I think that was well said. It was
Wow,
very
I
well
cannot believe
explained.
I'm 3 for 3 and I got it all in quickly.
We have
All
to
right.
I
no
appreciate
Thank you.
What's that?
And no PowerPoint.
And no PowerPoint. I just want to point out, no PowerPoint.
Oh, most of these people we went
Planner
early
with
were
no
like.
PowerPoint.
We
I
have
mean,
a
can we just
late
take a
arrival.
moment?
Councilmember Long has a question.
Oh, there we go.
Nothing but support. I just want to wish I'd seconded the motion. It's really a good idea. And thank you for your candor and your straightforward presentation to show what's what with RTD. And something that maybe Dr. Cog would want to consider in terms of trying to ameliorate some of the differences we've got with our communities when it comes to what RTD is supposed to be standing for.
So if I may just elaborate for a quick second on that, this is an outcome of all the previous efforts that Mayor Downing, former Councilmember Mullica, and others have really put forth to get us to this place with RTD. And the RTD Reimagine, all of these exercises are not for the fact that if we had not been as engaged as a community and a vocal voice with NADA and using our leverage as, even though we don't have a lot of skin in the game, we have been a very integral part to that. So thank you for that. I just don't want to lose and not recognize that this community and this council and former councils have been integral to getting us to this place. There's still a long way to go. You talk about big organizations, this one's one of the tougher ones, but they're moving in a good direction.
Great. Thanks, Brooke.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, draft ballot questions for the 0.5% sales tax extension and gender silent city charter language. So we have Jason Loveland, our interim deputy city manager, will lead off this item and provide information about the draft ballot question. And our city clerk, Joanna Small, will be here as well as city attorney Hoffman. Take it away, Jason.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for my last name. So this first question that I'm going to speak to tonight, really we introduced this at the May 13th strategic planning session, and we're bringing this back tonight as council requested more information and to take a look at what a draft question may look like. So in way of background of this sales tax that is expiring at the end of 2025, it was initially approved by voters in 2001 as a 0.5% sales and use tax to be used for the purpose of meeting the water supply needs of the community. It was later extended by the voters in 2008 and 2013, ultimately bringing us to the 2025 expiration. So regarding considerations, we'll go to the question last, but tonight the considerations that staff has outlined are: one, to bring forward a resolution to place the attached draft ballot question for the ballot. Bring forward a resolution revising the draft language that we're providing tonight. Direct staff to bring back more information on the topic in total, or determined to not place the question on the ballot in 2023. As you can see, budget and time implications, there would be the need to have a decision on this topic for questions to be added to the ballot by September 8th of this year. So there is some time between now and then, but there is an opportunity to speak about this tonight, as was requested at that strategic planning session. So the draft question, I don't know that I need to read it to you unless you want me to. I can.
No.
We have
No, we
personally.
have it.
I know that you're all very
We have it here.
capable
We don't have to read
readers.
aloud.
So just in general, without raising additional taxes, shall the 0.5% sales tax be extended without a sunset clause to be used for things such as capital improvements, specific things that we talked about at this session, residential streets, park amenities, public safety, public safety operations, and then other general needs of the city. So that is what is being suggested by staff at this time, and then we'll take any questions, feedback, thoughts about placing that on the ballot for 2023.
Councilmember Kondo.
So I think this is really interesting because, as Councilmember Long mentioned, North Metro is considering a ballot question for this coming fall to extend the mill levy, since otherwise it would retire. And they have already hired a pollster and have started focus group discussions and the survey, as he mentioned earlier tonight. I also, as now part of the board, have discovered that Westminster is considering a sales tax increase. I believe it is to fund a library. I'm just wondering, is there value in getting a pulse of our taxpayers and understanding what their amenability is for continuing this, or do we feel confident enough, as I think, Jason, you're characterizing that it's been approved, this extension was approved 2 different times in 2008, 2013, that the level of confidence is high enough that we could put it on the ballot with a high probability of success of approval? I myself, I feel a little bit nervous because of the increase in the property taxes and all of the feedback that I've kind of been hearing. So that's kind of what I'd like to have a conversation on.
Anyone want to respond? Councilmember Goff?
I guess I share your concerns, but my idea is, a response to that is, doing some kind of a poll or survey is expensive and time-consuming, and you don't always know, you're so dependent on who feels like doing it, that I almost believe that it's better to go ahead and try this for this year. If it's like a total, rejection, then that's it, we know that. But if it's kind of close or something, then maybe we can come up with some kind of plan and put it on again next year.
Anybody else? Councilmember Brown?
We are not asking for an increase from our residents. So I feel that a poll or a survey is not warranted at this time. What we are asking is to continue a process that has been in place. So we're not asking for an increase. You never know how the voters are going to go with it, but it needs to get on the ballot, and we need to keep the cost of getting it down on the ballot at minimal at this point. I remember when this was first passed, and then because it was done before, right when we moved to Northland, and then there was an extension on it. I don't foresee the residents being up in arms. The only thing is I can see is that they don't want to see another increase in tax. This is not an increase. This is just a continuation of the tax. And I really don't think that it's our place to only put things on the ballot that we think will be passed without, that we think, do you follow me? Because I've
We're
got.
making the decision instead of the
Yeah,
residents.
yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
needs to go on the ballot. We don't have any other option but to put it on the ballot. And I think that the voters should make up their minds and not, I don't think that there's any additional research that has to be done on it, any additional costs that the city should incur based on the Denver Metro Fire Board or the City of Westminster's actions. This is just a continuation of a 0.5% tax that we have had since, excuse me, Jason, the beginning of freaking time, it feels like. So that's my thoughts on it, Mayor.
Councilmember Long?
Given the timing of this, along with everything else that's taking place with the increases in our property taxes, as Councilman Condo has aptly pointed out, I think the timing is poor on this. I think also that this is disingenuous, because this does not run out until 2025. We can do this in 2024, when there's not so much clutter on the ballot, and all of the controversy that we're seeing with this tax increase. I can't tell you the calls I'm getting, so we're gonna hit them again, even though it's a continuation. To do it now, I think with everything else that's on the ballot and everything that's coming at them, I think this is bad timing. And, again, those property notices coming to the folks of Adams County, it's, whether you like it or not, it could be lumped in with the same ball of wax. People might think the same thing, oh, here we go, it's this one too. And with all due respect to my North Metro Fire Rescue District people, they put a great deal of time and effort into getting it right to make the statement say just what you want to say. And they're also sending it out to everyone in the district so they have a full understanding as to what's taking place. With all due respect, I see this as somewhat, again, with all due respect, a little bit of the amateur hour compared to what I'm seeing here in terms of persuading our voters and not letting them know that it's not needed until 2025. I mean, you're a whole year ahead of the game, and I don't know why you're pushing it like you are. And I think, if I might speak openly here, which I don't have a problem with, I guess, the North Metro Fire Rescue District, had they the opportunity to do this next year, they would have done it next year, but they have no choice. They have to do it this year, for the same reasons I'm giving you right now. This is a difficult time for voters to have to make decisions on taxes. It's taxes, taxes, taxes. That's all they're seeing. 2024 will be a different election cycle, different venue, different point of view.
So I just want to paraphrase a little bit. So you are praising the communication that North Metro Fire District put out. Is there a space for us putting an article in the connection or two, making sure that it's clear? I mean, the opening sentence is without raising taxes. So that's, I think it's clear as written, but if you would like to increase communication, are you proposing that we send something out or use a cheaper venue? Because we don't need to send a fancy flyer, because that costs a lot of money, but we could put it in the connection box.
Are you asking me?
I am.
I'll share this. I believe the staff is working hard enough to do everything that they're doing, to be honest with you. I don't think I'd want to put them up to having to do this. It takes a great deal of effort to put the right thing and the right words forward. Honestly, it does.
True.
And Jason knows, he's got the words, he's got the logic. If we just put it into something like this, I think it'll carry a little bit more heft. That's all I'm saying. Again, with everything else that's coming at us, I agree with Councilman Condo. I think the timing here is not good.
Okay, well, I'd like everyone to weigh in, but I want to get clarity on that piece real fast, is because I believe our city staff does have the talent to put the words together, but there's a difference between using our existing communication tool, which is the connection, and spending the money on a flyer that would be mailed out that would cost us more money. So I'm just wondering if you have a preference
I'm
of
not
the
going to
two.
spend any more money than we have to, Mayor. We're already spending money we shouldn't be spending.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say that we should send out a flyer and spend the money to do this.
Okay.
No, but I don't think the connection gets to everybody either. The messaging is not necessarily getting to everybody, as much as I'd want it to.
Okay.
And it's a good connection, don't get me wrong. I like what Diana does with that. but I'm just sharing, people are not in the know. And to tell them, oh, by the way, you're going to pass a law, this, or pass this and support this for 2025. What? This is 2023. Why are we voting a year ahead of time? Logical question.
Does anyone want to
My
speak to
opinion.
that
Yeah,
before we let
Corey, would you
council?
like to?
I know, but I didn't know if
I'm
they
sorry.
wanted, if Jason wanted to respond to that before other council members weigh
Yeah,
in.
So, as was presented at the strategic planning session, one of the reasons, that's been brought up tonight, if it were to not pass, you have another chance. That's one. So for long-range planning, we are funding an ongoing program with ARPA funds that expire at the end of 2024. And so when we're making determinations on how to continue programs that are being funded with one-time dollars, it is really important from a financial stewardship, I guess, mode to know that you're going to have new access to dollars to continue that program. So that is part and mainly the reason why going in 2023, from a staff perspective, to know, I guess, either you would find out, yes, we may extend this and we can continue on, or you would say, oh, that didn't work. We need to work harder in 24 and 25, if you will. So that's the logic behind going a little bit early. I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think the fire district's question is a little bit different because theirs was specific to debt service. And
No,
that
it's
there's-
not.
Oh, I thought it was specific to, I thought that the mill levy was expiring because of the debt service that had come to term. So it's not. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand it is a continuation, but I know we went back and forth at our strategic session trying to figure out, ending sunset clause or extending it in different periods. So I think there is quite a bit of a change, even though it is a continuation, because we're asking to get rid of, right, the sunset clause. So, I mean, that is, I think, a big deal for residents that maybe gives it a different perspective, right? It's like, it's not going to end anymore, like this is just a continuation, which I support, but thinking about what our residents are going to need to understand going, into this on the ballot. And then the second part that's a change is also expanding the use, which again, we support, right? But that's a huge change for our community as well. So thinking about those two things, yes, I understand on one hand, we could throw it out there on the ballot and if it doesn't pass, throw it out there again. But I do agree that maybe we need to think about better communication to our residents first. I mean, that is something that I hear about, we want to know about everything that's happening. If it's a ballot issue, I don't know what the extent of that looks like, whether it's spending money on flyers or something else. But I would like to have some kind of community engagement. And for that reason, I would say maybe it's better to push it out another year, to have a little bit more time versus September. Just
So
because
one-
it's,
sorry.
yeah. Go ahead.
One thing that I was going to mention is for us to communicate a question, and I think part of it is establishing the fact that we, from council's perspective, that council's directing it to even go forward in the first place, right? There's like step one of like, is this going to be a question? And then, hey, okay, we need to communicate what this actual question is and what it means. So without knowing that that's even the desire of council to move forward, that's why there hasn't been a communication about it before today, because we don't know if that's something that council desires, so.
Right. I know we had some extensive discussions, and so we weren't really, I don't think we had reached any agreement because we went back and forth on the sunset clause specifically, not about the change of use. But that is a change in terms of how the percentage is being used. So that's where I'm not having, made I'm not solid in whether I think it should be this year or not, but it's just something to consider And I would love to hear what everybody else thinks too.
Great. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just because it's 9:15, just way past my bedtime, I want to make sure I'm remembering and fully understanding this. This is a sales tax, right? So it's like you have to buy something here in Northland, right? So like Pros, which is going to be like a really fun, cool new thing, and we're going to have a lot more people coming to the area and purchasing delicious beverages and snacks at Pros, correct? Which would be a boon for this. Am I understanding that properly?
Yes, the sales tax is contingent upon a
So,
purchase.
okay, so this is not like a tax that we pay when we do taxes. This is like a tax we pay every time you buy something in Northland. So it's a half percentage on like whatever amount. Like if I bought a pack of gum for $1.75, that's like, so it's not like and it might not be like an extraordinary amount, like property, which is a completely different thing. Like if you live in Northland, I hope you are purchasing from local stores. I'm going to promote that, but like, this is something that may or may not apply to every resident and will apply to outside residents as well, which I think is something to really consider. And I think like, I understand when you see taxes, you're just, oh my God, and they all get lumped together, but it's a completely different thing. You know what I mean? And I think like the idea of, we have people who are renters in our city who the property tax does not apply to at all.
Right.
So this is something completely different. And I don't know what else I was going to say about it.
It's a good clarification.
But I just wanted to like make clear about that, like as the language of this is written out, Corey, I think like that last sentence, that just means grocery stores, right?
Food for home consumption.
Food for home consumption.
For grocery stores. What about like Grubhub?
You pay the tax on
There's
it.
another tax.
There is another tax, yeah. But it does, this is not, because like, and I guess you can order Grubhub to like wherever.
This is a general sales tax.
Yeah.
So it's going to apply on to every sale of goods or use tax in the city other than sales of food for home consumption.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. That's like, I just wanted to make sure I have the full picture here.
That was great. Councilmember Goff.
Thank you. I guess, I know we've gone around to everybody, but a couple of things I would say is I did want to point out, as Megan already did, about it's not just Northglen residents that will be paying this. It's people who come and shop in Northglen, stop and buy gas or coffee or whatever. And then I just feel like, I think we need to leave the choice to our residents. I mean, if we say, yes, we want you to move forward to this, it's not saying that we're going to do it. It's just saying that we're putting it out there for residents to vote on it. And if they don't want to pay it, then they can vote no. So I don't have any issue with moving forward on it this year. And like I said, if the results come back and it's really close, but it got voted down, then we might be able to tweak it. But if it's like a landslide against it, then we know it's not going to happen.
Councilmember Brown.
The other thing that I wanted to say is I think the reason that you want it on the ballot this year is so that you do have an opportunity to come back or financially planned through the next election, right? On how that money, where it's going to come from if it does not pass. So it gives us two, for lack of a better word, bites at it. And like Councilmember Goff said, the residents need to determine whether they approve of this. I don't campaign on things that are, I wouldn't go out and campaign on this for the city of Northland because that's not my place. That's not my responsibility. So I'm not going to go out and campaign it. I'm not going to, you look confused, but we don't do that. So I would not go out and campaign and ask the residents to vote for this. If someone were to ask me my opinion on it, have you ever heard me not give an opinion? They'd get one. But I think you need two shots at it, just in case. Otherwise, there is a financial impact that we need to be prepared for moving forward if it doesn't pass at the second round.
Councilmember Walker, do you want to weigh in?
Thank you. I renew my only, being the sole objector to the removal of the sunset clause. That is it.
Can you say more?
I think this should be left for future voters to vote on also. I don't think we shouldn't be taking that out of there, and I think that's what we're doing here. And I think the sunset clause should stay in. Thank you.
So if the I just need clarity from Jason. So if the sunset clause stays in, what does that mean?
Well, I guess there would be an opportunity to discuss how long of a sunset clause, is desired, kind of like what we talked about at the retreat. If it would be 5, 10, 15, 25, 30 years, or, so that would be for council, I guess, to discuss and determine from that perspective. Obviously, the longer the period of time is, the longer you can, I guess, count on that revenue source to fund certain things. And then the shorter, the opposite. If it's 5 years, you'd say, okay, well, we're good for 5 years, and then during that 5 years, we need to figure out, how we're gonna keep these programs going, depending on what it is. If it's investments in the roads, one of the things we talked about was the investments to keep up with the PCI rating, kind of level set that, and needing funding to do that. If this were to, be an ongoing thing or a sunset, would that be the desire to say, hey, for the next 5 years, we're going to invest this, knowing that if it's not renewed again, that investment kind of goes away. So I think those are considerations from like a financial planning perspective. And then, of course, council has a totally different perspective than the finance person. But from the finance view, that would be a consideration.
Councilmember Jaramillo, did you want to weigh in?
Yes, thank you. I do think we can communicate it better, I've heard that from numerous members of council and the mayor. We can communicate better what the continuation of the tax would be instead of adding new taxes. I think that we can communicate that with the our newsletter, connection. And, we can leave it up to, voters, and I think that we bring up a great perspective that, it's a sales tax for everybody who shops in North Glen. We live in a really, busy area, 120th to 104th, like right along there. Like a lot of people make their way through North Glen. And I think that would, help us finance plan ahead. That's why we have the I guess the 2-year gap. But I think we should put it on the ballot. I think just leave it up to people to vote on it, but be educated on it. So I think I pretty much just echoed a lot of people on board here. I still wouldn't like also the communication education on the sunset clause too, because I feel like a lot of people are gonna be like, well, what the heck is that? So, I think this is all I know when I read through for many years, I'd read it through anything on the ballot, be like, okay, so what does that really mean? So I think that's always stuff that we can do, and I think it's if you say it not in a way of pushing it one way or another, just basically making it black and white, I think that'd be acceptable. Thank you.
I'd like to weigh in before we go around again.
Sure.
So I appreciated Councilmember Burns clarifying the size of this and how it's actually generated. I think that's really important. And it's not a new thing. So and to Councilmember Goff's point of view, it should be in the hands of our residents. It's not our job to say whether or not they get to decide this at this time. I think it's written well, which I believe was the job of us today, is to look at the ballot language and to see if we appreciated how it was written. As far as communicating it and clarifying it for our residents, that is partly our job, because our neighbors will ask. 7 people will be knocking doors for other reasons. and they can answer these questions, but you have to answer them with background. You have to be really clear about, you know, all of the pieces. Is it new? What is the sunset clause? What does that mean? What is the money used for? What was it used for before? What programs is it going to sustain? So it's our job to be super informed about it so that when residents ask us these questions, we can answer them. But it's also our job to say, it's up to you. It's on the ballot for you to vote. And that's, you know, part of being an American citizen is being an informed voter and getting out there. So I support it without the sunset clause unless the sunset clause is extended significantly. So if it was like 10 years, I could get behind it. If it was 5 or less, I would say no, just based on the programs that we need to fund with this very small tax. And again, what we've already heard is that it's a lot of people outside of our residents that are going to be contributing to this. This is not something only for North Glen residents. Councilmember Kondo.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to, before I speak, I'd like to hear from Corey as he's been patiently raising his hand.
There's been a lot of discussion about communication, and so I think the Fair Campaign Practices Act is important here. You have language on the resolution that says draft. The date that ballot question is set is the date when the city council cannot, as a body, take a position, spend public money for or against the ballot question. So if you were to say bring it forward, we'd probably recommend bringing it the last council meeting before the date by which it has to be submitted to give the city as much time as possible to educate and do the work that you've been describing. But once the ballot question has been set, what the mayor indicated is spot on, that it's really individuals that provide the information. The city as an entity can do a pro-con statement. It can do factual information, but that factual information can't suggest a vote for or against. So it really has to be factual in nature. So there is some communication that can be done prior to the ballot question actually being approved by council if it is approved. But that date is an important date under the Fair Campaign Practices Act. And then one of the other issues related to the sunset clause, and Jason alluded to this, but using the PCI as an example, if there is a sunset clause, and we talked about the issue of if the city someday wants to issue debt, for example, secured by this sales tax. If there is a sunset, that limits the ability of the city to do that. That doesn't mean that it has to do that, but when Jason talks about planning for the future, it also includes the flexibility of having the possibility of looking at that as an option for financing, where if there's a shorter term sunset clause, you lose that ability, at least as to that source of funding.
Thank you. Councilmember Kondo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So thank you, Corey, for refreshing our memory and discussion from the strategic session. And where I'm starting to land now, after listening to many of my peers here on the dais, I think I'm starting to align with the mayor. I would be in favor of this language as long as we had, say, a sunset clause that said 10 years. I know the original was 5 years. I'm more than happy to go to 10 years. But to eliminate the sunset clause entirely still kind of, I think as Mayor Pro Tem talked about, it probably requires having some sort of interaction with the residents to kind of get their temperature as to how they feel about that. So that's where I sit at the moment.
Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I completely agree with you. I had written down that, I think a lot of what you comes down to us, and also the Fair Campaign. So thank you, Corey. I think it harkens back to the question that I brought up in communications that everyone asked me at our Northland Night Out is like, what do we do? That's it, right? We communicate to our constituents about important things. And, they get their ballot ahead of time. They can do their due diligence and read. I do think like putting an about this question, kind of like pros and cons, is really important for the commission to help, because that also is part of our job is to inform the voters. Yeah, and that's just, and I think to refresh my memory once again, it keeps getting later, time marches on, I guess. We discussed at our strategic planning that the sunset clause was a positive because it basically needed for this to be valuable, the years needed to be like a generation, correct? I remember it was like 25, 30 years, Corey?
If at some point council wants to look at issuing bonds, for example, they would typically be 30 years.
And then also, at any point, council could get rid of this tax as well, right? And that was also a pro for the sunset clause, because as a body, we could get rid of it.
I think the discussion was a little bit different. It was that if there was no sunset clause,
Okay,
council can still eliminate the tax at any point. You need voter approval to extend it. You need voter approval to adopt a tax. You do not need voter approval to stop imposing a tax.
so if my logic is understanding this, it would need an acceptable, monetary, beneficial age range, not age, oh my God, years, would be about 30, correct?
Yay, go ahead.
Well, so I think from a financing perspective, it would be 30 from 2025. And that would mean if that was going to be, utilized, we'd have to make that decision like that day, which is why the flexibility provided by not a sunset is obviously the most ideal in that world, is to not have those time constraints. So.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the second part of that is, if voters approved this without a sunset clause, but then things change, different body, more constituents are saying we want to get rid of this, the dice would then have the opportunity to get rid of it, even without the sunset clause.
You could simply adopt an ordinance to eliminate the tax.
Okay.
So long as it wasn't secured. In other words, if you had issued bonds that were secured by that, you could not then terminate the tax. But if it was not secured, you could terminate at any time.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, yeah, that was my only concern, that I understand this has to go to the voters, totally, that's where we are, but we kind of weren't in complete agreement in terms of the sunset clause. And my concern is definitely making sure, as Councilmember Jaramillo said, that we get the word out to our residents and that they understand, because some people don't understand what a sunset clause is. And why we need to change the use, right? Because our PCI and all of that's important. If we want to get voters to understand why we're presenting this, then I think that's important. But I don't know that having a sunset clause that's, as you mentioned, 5 years or sooner, and the mayor mentioned, is going to help us at all. Like, it doesn't sound like, if we want to be able to have a future bond, that it won't help us. So we either have to go with the wording of without a sunset clause or 25, 30 years, it sounds like, for it to be of any potential future use for the city.
Jason, can you put your financial director hat on, or director of finance, but just for a minute?
Sure.
Just take a, step to the side, step back. Okay.
Yeah.
What, if you were to draft it with a sunset clause, what would be the ideal amount of time?
Well, I wouldn't, but if I.
Okay, I mean, that's fair. I hear that.
I mean, I think there isn't, the extension of the tax for the variety of, considerations that have been proposed are kind of infinite. Like, those are ongoing things that the city is going to operate for forever. If it was a specific situation where like, we need to extend this tax to finance X project, then we could say, it might take a while until we build up enough momentum to plan and price out the project. So you might say 30 to 40 years, because that provides a little bit of leeway. But for kind of some ongoing operational things, roads aren't going away that I'm aware of. Parks are not going away. Public safety also not going away. So from that perspective, I think that's why the recommendation from staff perspective is, to eliminate the sunset. So, or 50 years if you need.
Or 50
a number.
years if we need
If
it.
you're
Yeah,
demanding
that's
a
the
number.
Councilmember Goff?
Thank you. I guess I'm just going to say, I think we could put it to our voters to get it without the sunset clause. And here is another reason why I think that, and that is because, we hear people all the time complaining about traffic and all this kind of, this would be a way to get the people who don't live in North Glen, but drive through North Glen, litter in North Glen, whatever, crash their cars in whatever you want, to help pay for maintaining our city. So I don't have any problem with getting rid of the sunset, limit on this. And if it doesn't pass, then, and we've learned something and we'll try it again or try something else.
I will say I concur with Councilmember Goff based on your insight, your recommendation.
Okay.
Councilmember Long?
The current sales tax addresses the very things you've put in this word, correct? Capital improvements, including but not limited to residential streets. That's what it currently covers, correct?
The current 3% has no restrictions or definition. It's general use, period. So the 3% sales tax, so right now we have a 4% sales tax. Half percent is restricted to capital improvements, so similar to this language. The other 0.5% restricted for water supply enhancements. And then the other 3% is just general use.
What I'm asking is the designation of those two halves. Which one, did you pick which 0.5% you wanted to cover? Is that what you did here?
So the one that is expiring is the one that's restricted for water supply enhancements.
Okay.
And so that would be the language that we would be changing, because that's the one that's
So you're
expiring.
going to change the water, because we've got that covered elsewhere, all the reserves we have. We talked about that before.
Yeah.
So this 0.5% continuation would be reassigned to these items that you've listed here.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm sorry that some people on the dais have parsed my words, but I'm not against extending the 0.5%. Not at all. We need the sales tax, absolutely. It's the one addition to liquidity that we have where we have discretionary use of funds. Not for 1 minute would I want to have this go away. My statement is strictly one of saying, I think the timing is very poor. I think we haven't communicated. And as Corey brings it up, as a legal man should, we're going to have to, in my opinion, in the connection, show the pros and cons statement as early as feasible to show what this is about, as opposed to putting a wrapped bubble around it with all kinds of frills and ribbons. I think you have to be straightforward with facts in terms of the pros and cons in the connection, if that is the way you decide to go with this. But again, I'll just reiterate, I think human nature being what it is, voters this fall are going to be inundated with all kinds of tax questions. They're going to be thinking property tax, it'll be fresh on their mind. They've got a governor who wants to take back Tabor, if they're willing to give it up. I mean, you've got a lot of things, and if I'm just looking at this and it's complicated, and you say, well, wait, here's another one? I'm just sharing human nature being what it is, and I think my neighbor next door just said it. People read things, and it's complicated when you look at it. So I'll just fight myself with that statement.
Well, let's see if we can get some consensus for staff going forward. So I feel like I've heard support for the ballot language this year. Is that correct? Like, do we have enough support for that on the ballot this year? Maybe not? No? And no?
Are you talking the whole language in general, or
Just
just?
like
okay.
putting it on the ballot this year. I'm trying to take it into pieces. So fully, okay, so we have two that don't, but the rest do. So putting it on the ballot this year. I think what we need to go back to, as the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, is with or without the sunset clause. So based on conversation, I have shifted, and I think the sunset clause should be, I think it should be, I'm proposing, my support is for exactly as written today. So without it, adding the additional conversational pieces that we've had with Corey as far as communication and timing and when does it drop and how do we communicate? And then we give it to the voters. And what happens after that is what happens after that, for everything that Jason mentioned. So that's my proposal. Where do we sit with that?
I'm with you.
I trust Jason.
Me too. That's
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I think we've got 6 yays on that, 3 nays on that, but consensus says we go forward. Okay, thank you. All right, next item. That's still you, or is that switching over to Corey Hoffman?
It's actually Joanna.
Ah, Joanna, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I will try to be really brief based on the time. I do want to mention just a couple things. I know the memo for this item was fairly lengthy. Wanted to provide some background information and some rationale as far as staff's perspective. If council remembers the ordinance that was adopted in January of 2022 that directed the language in the municipal code to be amended to be gender silent, this would be making the same type of amendments to the city charter. It would remove the gender binary terms throughout the document without changing the meaning of the amended charter provisions. So in many cases, the language would be more specific. It would provide more clarity because instead of gendered pronouns, titles would be used. For example, the mayor, the council member, the city manager, the director, in several sections. There was an attachment, number 5, that was added to the packet today that provides a list of all of the sections that have gendered language and then some examples as far as how that language would be modified. Just very quickly, the reasons for using gender silent language include that it is less ambiguous, it modernizes language to remove the male-dominated and gender binary pronouns such as he, his, and in some cases she and her. It is the most inclusive style of language for all genders. It is likely to be perceived as neutral or welcoming by all audiences, regardless of a person's gender or background. And in this case, if the charter is amended to include the gender silent language, any future amendments related to gender would not be necessary because that gender silent language covers it all. By using the position titles and not including those gender-specific references, those are irrelevant to the eligibility of the person holding the position, so future amendments would not be needed. There are 4 draft ballot questions included in the packet. Very quickly, the first one is a very concise question, simply asking if the charter should be amended to make the language throughout the charter gender silent. The second question specifies that gender-specific references would be replaced with the use of position titles. The third draft question explains that the change is intended to reflect the makeup of the city's residents and to provide consistency in the charter. It further specifies that the gender-specific references, including an example of he, would be replaced and that the term council member would be used to consistently refer to those serving on council. And then the fourth draft question is the same gender-neutral question that failed in 2019. So same staff recommendation regarding the options for council's consideration tonight, with one extra recommendation, and that is if council desires to submit a question to the voters this November, staff would recommend choosing a question that requires gender-silent language in the city charter. And I'm happy to answer questions about the other information in the memo.
Councilmember Walker?
Thank you, and Mr. Mann, thank you for that wonderful summary. I do believe something was important that was left out of there. I'm not saying I'm for or against this, but let's not remember this was just up for election and it failed 55-45. And while the 9 of us up here may be wanting to go one direction with the city, and we have a consensus, maybe not a unanimous agreement, the 7,465 residents of Northglenn said something different. And that would be us not listening to them as former councils did back in 2019 when they approved or wanted to stand behind Prop CC and it failed dramatically. So I think we need to respect the voters. This was an actual legitimate election, and I think we need to respect the voters' wishes on this. Thank you.
Councilmember Goff?
Okay, thank you. One of the things I want to say about this one is that I was not on city council in 2019. That was the election I was voted in on. And so I was one of those voters, and I did vote for this, and I was completely surprised that it was not passed. And in talking to some of the other seniors at the rec center about this particular one, it was kind of clear to me that they didn't quite understand what this is all about. And I'm still a little leery of even calling it gender silent, although that is better than gender neutral. I think a lot of people saw the word gender and immediately jumped to something else. So I'm totally for putting this back on the ballot, but we really need to do a much better job of explaining what it means. I mean, to me, I don't think people realize that when I was first on the city council and I was looking up something to think about what city council members can or can't do, and I saw the he and him and all that, I was kind of offended because I'm not a he. And here it is, I'm a city council member reading through, what my duties and responsibilities are, and it's talking about somebody else as far as I could tell. So I really think this is important, and I think it didn't pass, and it wasn't by that, it was not that far off. It wasn't a landslide against it. I really believe that it was people not understanding and just kind of reacting to, what they were gleaning from the name of the ordinance or whatever. So I would really like to try to bring this forward again, and I think we're going to find out that things have changed enough that people will be more willing to go through, the time to think about this and why we would want to do it. And I hope that we do a better job of communicating that ahead of time.
Councilmember Brown?
It's a little rant. I am thoroughly opposed, or not opposed. I am thoroughly for this. This has got to get on the ballot. We live in a country where the women's rights equal rights amendment has not been ratified since 1988. And it is impossible for me to believe that we would allow as a society, women, men, transgendered, anything, to not be equal in how the world is run. Our city charter is an embarrassment. Not only from my perspective as a woman, but as my perspective as I lead other women and mentor them through their careers and their lives and their education. This has got to go back on the ballot. It came out on the ballot at a very interesting time, and I think people took it the wrong way, what we were trying to do. But this is ridiculous that in 2023, it's my rant, that I read this charter
I'm with you.
and I do not associate with it because I'm not a he, I'm not a him. I am a woman who was elected to this office, right? So this, in my personal opinion, needs to be on the ballot this year. And I agree with Councilmember Goff, but I'm not so sure how that's done, whether it's done, the communication's done through the DICE board or something like that.
The DICE board supports.
Oh, yeah. This one, it's just bringing us into the right century. As women, we are just as valuable and just as important as any man on this planet. Removing the gender-specific words from the charter just levels the field and respects the women of our community. Okay, that one's a little rough on me because I also did a little speech today on the Equal Rights Amendment, so that one just brought that one back.
All right. Councilmember Long?
Point of order with the attorney, as this would be also provided information to show pros and cons, would it not?
Yeah, it's still subject to the Fair Campaign Practices Act in the same manner.
And based on what Councilman Walker has said, a decision was made by the voters, but it seems as though the city council countermanded that on November 5th, excuse me, when they voted in January 2022, it looks like. So
I'm not sure what.
I don't understand.
it says that January 22, city council adopted ordinance number 1824, amending the municipal code.
That's the municipal code.
That's the municipal code, not the city charter.
Now, I know, I'm
Okay.
saying that. So you changed the code. Now you want to take the code language and put that into the charter. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, council can approve, amend the code by ordinance, but only the voters can approve the charter. So yes, this would be to create the same gender-silent language in the charter that has already been placed in the code.
Okay, so just now, just again, for my understanding, I'm not thinking one way or the other. Don't cloud it and don't parse my words. I'm just making the observation that you've got an ordinance that says one thing and you've got a charter that says the other. And what you're trying to do is trying to bring the ordinance in sync with the charter. Is that a fair depiction of this?
The other way around, the charter.
I mean,
Yeah.
the charter.
Yes. And I think the distinction is that the change to the code is not inconsistent with the charter. If it were inconsistent with the charter, then it could not have been adopted. So contextually, I think the council made a determination that the code was being brought current as compared to the charter that has the terminology of just reflecting the male gender.
Well, now you confused me.
Well, I apologize. How did I confuse you?
Well, I'm easily confused this evening. The language was changed in the ordinance.
In the municipal code, yes.
Municipal code, okay? So that was all done.
Correct.
Now we want to take that language and put it into the charter.
The charter requires approval of the voters of the city of North Glen.
That's what I'm saying.
So the answer to that is yes, but the code amendment did not require voter approval.
I understand.
Okay.
If we put this in the charter, would that then change the ordinance?
Not at all.
If I could say it a
Oh,
different way.
please, yes.
So my understanding from everything that's happened is the city charter and the municipal code have their own provisions. Nothing changed the meaning of the municipal code when the ordinance was adopted. The meaning all stayed the same. The only thing that changed was to take the gender out of it. So when you say, in my mind, I don't believe that any language was moved from one document to the other. The documents remained the same as far as the meaning, the provisions of the documents. The only thing that changed was one was made gender silent. I apologize.
Don't apologize.
I thought maybe that
No,
would
you're
say it a different
explaining
way,
it.
but.
Excuse
Okay.
me for trying to get sense of this.
Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I hear Councilmember Walker, Councilmember Long about people voted on this in 2019, but we vote on something every year. We vote on a new president every 4 years, and a lot has changed in culture and society since 2019. We went through a pandemic. We, I think, had a lot of things come up, and so I don't think it's unrealistic to ask voters to do this again. I'm new to North Glen. I met a ton of new people who've moved to North Glen in the last 2 years. well. And I think their voices should be heard on this matter as well. So that's kind of my feeling on that. And I do think it would be nice if, all of our official documents included everybody. We're talking about Pride Month, and I think like the inclusion of our community and diverse community that we have here in Northland that continues to diversify. It is important because I had the same thoughts as you. Remember, Brown, when I went through my orientation, I was like, oh, well, geez, this says, they'll get paid, but what
Yeah.
about me?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of my thoughts on this and like why I do think this is a good idea to bring back.
Mayor, if I could, one, I guess, historic or contextual piece is that in 2019, when council first placed the question of being gender neutral on the ballot, it literally took language that had been approved by the voters in Broomfield. And I don't think, frankly, there was a lot of discussion about it. Once it was approved, it was on the ballot. I don't think anyone went out and did any education. I think, frankly, at the time, based on what happened in Broomfield, I think folks thought it would just pass based on what happened in Broomfield. In the meantime, going from 2019 to 2022, frankly, thanks in large part to a lot of the work the city clerk's office did, we learned that there were all these different terminologies and that really gender neutral wasn't what the appropriate terminology was. And this idea of being gender silent and referring to positions was what the council went to in 2022. And when the city clerk mentioned it eliminates ambiguity, I think that's important in the sense that there are any number of pronouns. Pronouns, frankly, in terms of interpreting a code, make language ambiguous. And so by simply identifying by position, taking whatever opinion related to gender politically you may have, I can tell you that as a matter of law, it makes everything more clear because you're not talking about pronouns, you're talking about positions. And so if council is inclined to do this, it is a different type of question because it is much different than the question in 2019 and frankly reflects a lot of the research the city has done since 2019.
Thank you. I'd like to call attention to page 9 of the packet because I think this particular question is the most clear. And then I'm going to call on Councilmember Jaramillo.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add that clarity is what I'm all about. When you look at the right side, when you compare and contrast, it's much more clear. You know who you're talking about, you're talking about the mayor, council members, whoever, and it's much more clear. The left side on the current is clearly dated, so I think that, and as you said, legally, you know what you're talking about. It's cut and dry. So I think it makes sense that we, maybe gender silent isn't like the best way to present it. Maybe people don't, maybe that's some.
So what do you think of on page 9?
Okay,
At the bottom? So it says, gender silent, I think is better than gender neutral.
Yeah.
Then it says, meaning that gender-specific references shall be replaced with the use of position type.
Yeah, position titles, I think that clearly states it, yep. Getting late.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It sounds like two big themes are still, it's going to be put to the voters, just like this last discussion we just had about the 0.5% use tax. It'll be put to the voters, they'll approve it, they'll deny it. And we need more education around it, as Councilmember Goff said, and as Councilmember Jaramillo just said. Maybe it's not clear what that means, and people hear gender, oh my gosh, and then, and then it becomes this thing. It's 2023, for goodness sakes. I cannot believe when I read this, city manager, we have a female city manager, we have a female mayor, and yet it says he, we have female council members, and everything is, he, his, I'm looking around, I'm like, that doesn't fit. Making this a title absolutely makes sense. And it's way more clear, as everybody said, like, this to me is so much easier to read. You know exactly who you are referring to in the charter. The city manager, the mayor, police officer. I don't refer to any female police officers as policemen. I don't even refer to any male police officers as policemen. I say police officers. It's just part of my language because it's more clear. And for goodness sakes, again, we are in 2023. We are not in 1969 anymore. We had an all-female council, and I'm about to go on a rant, in 2021. And we have a lot of women in high-ranking positions. And so this is, if this were reversed and it was she and her, then it would exclude other people as well. And that wouldn't be right as well. So no matter how you look at it, this is just the right thing to do, and ultimately, it is something that the voters will vote on or against. I do think that that language should make it clear that it's position titles. It's not like 2019 where it was gender neutral,
Right.
which would have been like he or she. This is the manager. So, I mean, for goodness sakes, let's just get with 2023 and put it to the voters. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor,
Circling back, yes, Councilmember
I
Brown?
am going to pull the parliamentarian hat for just a minute.
Yes,
We've hit the 10 o'clock bewitching hour.
Yep.
We'll need to have a vote from council in order to continue going on with the meeting, past the 10 o'clock witching hour now that we've changed it. I personally think that we should finish up this topic of conversation tonight. It shouldn't take us much longer to do. So can I get a thumbs up or thumbs down if you're voting to extend the meeting?
great.
Cool.
Thank you.
We got
Thank you
it.
for doing that. Okay. Did you want to say anything else, or you're good? I have two more hands.
I think, am I up? Because I don't think, I'm
No, I
not
think
going to
you were
rant
just
again.
doing that part.
Yeah,
Thank
I was
you.
doing that part, that's what it
Okay.
was.
Councilmember Condo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask the city clerk again. You said that the fourth question was not accepted. I wonder if you have the stats on the percentage who voted for, against, and what was the margin of error on that particular? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Handout.
Towards the
Okay,
beginning.
gotcha. Thank you. Maybe I just missed that.
Councilmember Long?
The
What
wording
about
is
margin?
not ambiguous. It's better understood without bias if you use attachments to's wording. It is correct. You're talking about position titles. We've always in the fire district, call them firefighters. We don't go about talking about male, female. Everybody's equal in the game. And you're all putting your lives on the line. Same thing here with our police officers. So I'm totally supportive of this. If Jay wants to take a look, you can see I put okay in here when I went through the whole thing the first time around. This makes good sense to me, and Corey's making it even better when he says it's not ambiguous. That's exactly what we have to do. However, I'll counter again with the fact that we, by law, have to show the pros and cons of what this meaning is, and however we communicate that with our folks, we have to have it unambiguous as to what it really is talking about. So if we can keep it like this, pretty straightforward, without bringing in any other statements, I think that I could support this language as a question to the voters. And I'm saying this out loud now, so when we talk about pros and cons, the pros and cons are facts. Facts.
Do we normally do a pros and cons on our ballot questions? We haven't had one in so long. We don't normally.
Yeah, I don't remember.
We have on some of them, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a requirement.
Correct.
Right, it's not a requirement. You were just stating that
If,
could.
yes, if the city desires to put information out about the ballot questions, it has to be factual, and can't take a position for or against expending city money following the date the ballot questions are set.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank
At
you.
risk of opening a box, I would really love to hear what a con might be.
I can think of two of them.
Please.
The original drafters drafted that language purposely, and that the voters rejected the 2019 attempt to make the language gender.
But that's a con to putting it back on the ballot. That's not a con to changing the
making the
language.
But that, we have to come up with factual.
That's what I'm
And
saying.
those are the two I can come up with.
I mean, I would really love to, because I think that's not answering the right question.
Right.
Joanna, do you have one?
I do have two.
Please.
From a different municipality, but these were the cons that they used. The first one was making this change is of little consequence and simply reflects a move toward political correctness. The second one was the charter has historic significance that should be maintained without revision.
Got it. That one, okay, I get that. Okay, well, I support that. So I think, Joanna, one of the questions that you had for us is which language made the most sense. So I had proposed the one on page 9 because it's very clear and succinct. Does anyone like a different one? Yeah.
I like that one as well. Just wondering if there, I'm trying to find it now. Okay, here it is. If, instead of saying that I don't know, I guess I'd try, if there was some way we get the word gender out of there, just because it seems to freak people out. Just to say that, like the pronouns could be replaced with position type instead of gender specific or something like that.
Any way we look at it, it kind of brings that word gender right back.
I just think,
I know.
I just think people freak out. That's like one of these hot button words, even though it doesn't mean what, in this context, what you often hear about in the news. This is language. It's like grammar. It's not, like all the
Right.
emotions that come up around.
Did you call them personal pronouns?
Something like that, yeah.
Well, I guess
Don't
I
use
would
that.
suggest, really, we are seeking direction tonight on whether to go forward. We can still work on looking and tweaking the language. I think we have time.
That's good to know.
So, I mean, I think we can go back to the drawing board and look at different language, understanding the concerns that have been raised, and try to come up with language
Okay.
and continue to work on it.
Yeah.
I think gender silent is better.
No, it's better
For
than.
sure.
than-
Yes.
But yes,
Gender
so
neutral,
I think
yes.
we just need to get a final vote, thumbs up for support on putting this on the ballot, and then they'll go back and tweak it.
You're talking about this specific language in attachment 2, page 9.
No, this specific
Issue.
topic, and then they're gonna go back and fine tune the link.
Is that right?
So putting a question on the ballot to change,
I have to know that it's this. I'm sorry. You said
Okay.
it. Page 9 is what you're
I mean,
advocating,
but
so
there-
why aren't you standing behind it?
I just heard our city attorney say, we have time to tweak the language. They are just asking for direction to move forward or not.
And certainly, if you want to pick one tonight, you can.
Why do you-
Well, I like page 9, so do we
I do
want to
too,
just?
and it's fine. You know what Mark Twain said?
What?
The difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and the lightning bug. Which
Thank you
means,
for that wisdom.
get exactly the right wording that you want. I'm looking at the right wording. This works.
Okay, so I hear a proposal for page 9. How do people feel about that? I'm okay with it.
I'm with-
Catherine, do you want to keep tweaking?
If everybody else is happy with this one, we can give it a shot.
Becky, what do you want to do?
I would like to move forward and make sure that this is on the ballot, of course. I'm okay with the language on 920, on page 9, versus all the other examples that we were given. It's the best of the bunch, but is it the best that we can do? That's kind of where I go back and forth. If you're asking me, do I want to move forward with something on the ballot to address this, I'm right there with you.
Got it.
If you're telling me that, or if you're asking me, these are my only choices, and then it would be page 9. My concern, you know what? Like, I'll follow your lead on this one, because if everybody else is okay with page 9, I don't see anything being wrong with it. I think that we're predicting the future, like this is going to be an issue this time. I think that the world was in a different place in a different time and wrapped up in, all kinds of things that were happening with gender transitions and things like that. Yes, sir.
If you decide on language tonight, it does give us more time to get information out prior to the ballot question being set on what it all means.
Okay, so it looks like page 9 is on the
Page 9,
table.
yeah.
So Councilmember Walker, I know, have we swayed you, or are you okay?
I'll still, I never took a position on it. I'm okay with page 9.
Okay.
I was just
Page-
stating some
Yeah.
things that were not brought to light.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Page 9 is
Yes,
fine.
page 9, how are
Yeah,
you?
yeah.
Page 9, are you okay with, do you want to speak to it?
What's your favorite?
Right?
Genuinely, I don't think
You wrote them all, so which one?
I didn't write them all. The city clerk participated, and we stole from other examples of cities struggling with the same issue. My personal opinion is the language of the ballot question matters less than getting the information out, and that those that caring about it work the question. So I think on this one, the language matters less than the communication.
Okay. I'm wonderful with mine, and sorry, Joanne, I didn't know you helped. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So do you think we could challenge to remove the word gender specific, gender neutral, just word it so it doesn't have those terms in there? It just says, for example, with attachment 4, I like that it, or is it, let's see, where it just says like, about the position title, or that,
That's two.
that's 11.
Page 9.
Page 11.
Page 11 is,
I like that it says that such as he, and the use of the term council member consistently refers to those, like putting that as an example.
Yeah.
I think having that in there too is big, because that's what, when you look at this document and you look at it side by side, you're like, wow, he, him, he, whatever. Like, it looks like it doesn't reflect what we're really trying to say. We're trying to say the mayor, the council member. I think that we should have that in there in the where page 9 does not have that.
So page 9 with the example, I support that,
Yeah, and then
such as
maybe
that
some
section.
way of not utilizing gender in there, because I know especially like people now are just gonna like,
I think that may be
It's a red
harder,
flag.
and so now we're over tweaking. So let's see if we can stick with page 9 with your added piece.
okay, I think
How do you
that.
feel about that?
I think that's what we're really trying to address, because not everybody's gonna look, nobody looks at our charter and reads it, no one really does that unless you're like council
Running for
member or
council.
mayor or, so.
Are you saying you didn't read it?
No, I'm saying, nobody does, I said unless.
unless, okay.
Until you become.
Until you're on council.
So what I'm saying is like, that's the biggest example. That's like
No,
example
I
A.
think that's fair.
Like,
I
Can you put
support
an
that
example
idea.
like that
So,
in there?
yeah, so I think what I hear is blending attachment 2 and attachment 3 to perhaps use terminology including position titles and examples
Yeah.
that are in
So
attachment 3.
Page 9 with the such as. I think that's great. Yes? Councilmember Kondo, how are you doing? Yes, great. Oh, we did it. Okay. Fantastic. Moving along. Any public invited? Do you want to say anything now?
Come on, Ms. Kate.
No, just like, I want to go to bed. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. We are adjourned.
okay.
Holy moly. Leave meeting.
Oh, I'm still getting a ride home. I'm going home with Nick tonight. Jay, but thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and go ride with Nick, okay?
Fine.
Thanks. I don't know if I'm still alive.